All right, this is a meeting of the Leominster School Committee. It is May 30th. We are at the Cousins Auditorium for the Performing Arts, Leominster High School. It is 7 p.m. Would you all stand and join me in the salute to the flag? Thank you. At this time, we'd like to open up the open forum session of the meeting. There's a microphone and a podium there. Just your name and address for the record, please. We ask everyone to limit their comments to 2 minutes so everyone will get a chance to speak. We also ask that there be no remarks or clapping while the person is talking, so that way we could hear. There were some members of the committee last time we met that could not hear all of what the presenters had to say. So we just ask for your patience and courtesy. First speaker is Larry Janakis Jr.
For the record, my name is Larry Janakis Jr., 148 Grant Street. I was born and raised in Leominster, graduated from LHS in 1991, and I'm currently raising my family here. I'll be let go in 31 days, just a week shy of 17 years with the district. I'm not here to talk about me though. I'm here to address the 50% reduction in building level technology technicians you're eliminating. I urge the school committee to ask for information on that $150,000 outsourcing cost. Is that a true cost or was it simply made up? Did the district draft a request for proposal? Or if so, how many people responded? Before making any decision, I urge the school committee to review that quote carefully and verify the students and staff are getting the support that they need and that the cost will not exceed that price. You can find companies that will come in and service the needs of the school computer network, but these companies do not specialize in servicing the individual needs of the students and teachers of Leominster. For every time I visit one of these schools, each school-based technician has resolved dozens of routine issues that never became a problem because they were taken care of in a timely manner. Without the building level technicians, there will be no one to quickly change a forgotten password, no one to troubleshoot a projector in the middle of a lesson, no one to help the administration and principals set up for a meeting such as this one, no one to help a special needs student access their Google account, or adding an app to their iPad which enhances their education and supports their unique individual education plan. This is just a fraction of what these talented individuals do on a daily basis. They add tremendous value to the district, and they are vital to the day-to-day operations of the school. I'll leave you with this question. Why is it that this budget cut represents only cutting of individuals and no other reductions in spending? Is it because the district has another plan they plan to present? A plan that looks a lot less ugly when compared to this one? I'd like to thank all the teachers that have educated my children here in Leominster, and I'm obviously disappointed with losing my job, but I look forward to being able to put this nightmare behind me and moving on. And I wish all the others affected by this the best of luck, and I hope as this door closes, a bigger and better one opens up somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Yep.
Hi, my name's Sarah Ramram. Is this working?
Yeah, just get a little closer.
Hi, my name's Sarah Ramram, and I live on 61 Pine Street. I'm here again for the second week, and last week was more emotional, and it was more anger-driven, and it was more why and how and why are they even doing this to us? This year is more reasonable. It's more, let's face the facts. And the fact of the matter is, we don't want $5 million to be cut from our budget, but it will be. We don't want our education to be just hindered or cut and our classes to go down to minimum levels and just the kids not to feel comfortable as to the options they have in class. But the actual truth of the matter is that $5 million is a huge sum. Our mayor, that gives us the bare minimum required by the state every year, will not just give us a check of $5 million. Our financially incompetent superintendent may have put us in this situation, yes, but we need to look at why and what can be done now after the $5 million will be cut from our budget. And looking at that and thinking about it hurts, but as a community, I'm not gonna leave. I'm not gonna transfer to another school in my last year because I love Leominster. I spent my years here in Leominster. I met the nicest people here in Leominster. No one ever has said anything mean to me. I've made the nicest friends. The best people are in Leominster. And I really wouldn't trade that for the world. So if you ask me if I'm leaving this community, no, because I know the people here. But if you ask someone else from the outside, are they gonna enter this community? That's gonna be a no also. So I just wanted to express that reasonable answer and just convey my feelings as a student once again. I'm sorry I went over. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Jen Kiefer, 104 Center Road, Fitchburg. Good evening, Superintendent Joliker, Mayor Mazzarella, School Committee. I wanted to take a moment and thank you for all of your listening to our concerns and suggestions, reading and responding to countless emails, I'm sure, over the past week, and most importantly, for taking the time to determine how cost-effective our suggestions are and whether they could be implemented. I think it's safe to say that change is needed when addressing the budget. What has been done for as long as anyone can remember is the presentation of a budget based on net school spending, and ultimately this budget gets passed on to the City Council, and that's what we're forced to live with and try to function with. One of the questions that is raised continually is, why is this process starting with a net school spending budget? The budget that is drafted, presented to this committee, approved by this committee, should include and cover all expenses necessary to successfully provide a free and appropriate education for all students. We need and deserve more than what is being provided. If you continue to ask for bare bones, then you're going to get bare bones. Please advocate for more. Support our students, your teachers, all of the professionals that work with our children and in our schools, and your city by starting with a budget that reflects all that is needed to continue to provide the high-quality, rigorous education that we provide for every student in the city of Leominster. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Gary Zimmerman and Evelyn Cruz.
Gary Zimmerman, 47 Lynn Haven Road. I've been laid off, and I know how it feels, and I don't wish it on anyone, but in the private sector, it happens a lot. In the public meeting last week, the union rep for the janitors brought up a point on pay for the Chartwell folks when they privatized the food service at the schools, saying they cut their pay and they hire them back at a lower rate. This is the public sector world. Minimum wage, $11. It would be nice to put some numbers to show what the savings has been by having the food service privatized. It would help us make and understand the decisions. As a taxpayer, you see and hear things like the LCE being created at a huge cost. It was stated many times it would not affect the budget. It seems like it has. You see the contract for the super increasing substantially. Then the admin getting a $6,000 raise. You see salaries for 81-day contract that is equivalent to 240 days in the private sector. What about the $500K that was given to the school last year that the mayor mentioned last week? I'd like to understand where that went. How is the public supposed to have confidence in the decisions being made for the schools without the data? I actually think more decisions and power should be put onto the school committee and not one person, just so there are checks and balances. But the state school committee sets the rules. Maybe they need a reality check and change things around. I like facts and numbers, but we don't get them to help us understand this decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next is Evelyn Cruz.
who do not know me, my name is Evelyn Fournier, and I live on 9 Powderhouse Lane. Next year, I will be a senior at this establishment, and I honestly have a few questions. How is it possible that the need to take away programs that are important to the lives of many students in this high school is a necessity? I'm a member of multiple choir groups, and as well as the theatrical company of this high school, and a sister to one of the athletes. Studies show that programs such as the arts are a vital part of students' education, and they help inspire stuff like creativity, improve grades, focus, and confidence within a student that are often shut away and hidden when you're in a classroom setting. By taking away these programs, we not only will be depriving my fellow students from receiving these advantages, but also taking away their ability to connect with other students who share this common interest. And the ability to connect with a teacher that may help them get into college through a simple letter of recommendation. I know of many students who wouldn't even be here today if it weren't for these programs and the teachers who were a part of them. If you must take away funding, fine. That's fine. Chorus only gets about $500 to $600 for the first 2 months of school every year, and theater gets pretty much nothing, and we fundraise everything ourselves. We work hard so that we have the money to put on shows for people in Leominster. People enjoy these shows, and it would be really sad to see them taken away. But don't take these programs away from us. Don't take them away from the freshmen that are coming up next year or the year after that. Because if you spent the time with us to see what we do for your children, your grandchildren, sons, daughters, nieces, and nephews, you'd see the reason that we love these programs. They're a part of us and have become who we are in this school. I also know that you have decided that JV sports is no longer a priority. When you make the decision to take away these sports, you send a message to the students who have trained since elementary school to be a part of them. You take away their motivation and their ability to play and build reputations that will help them get into college. They will appear less competitive on applications, and they can hurt their ability and cause students to receive less funding for scholarships. Last week, a quote stuck out to me, and I will repeat it again. These cuts may affect about 30% of Leominster's population, but by accepting them, you will eventually end up causing a mess of 100% of the future of Leominster High School.
Josh O'Neill, and then Richard Pete.
I just want to hold it. Hello, my name is Josh O'Neill of 124 Water Street in Leominster, and I go to Leominster High School. 2 years ago in 2014, I was that kid who ate lunch in the bathroom and was alone. Yes, of course, I had my small group of friends, but one day while I was walking to the bathroom to go eat my lunch, I heard singing. And I walked into the chorus room, and then I found the LHS chorus, which I've been a proud treasurer for 3 years. It's because of Mr. Arthur Pierce that I was able to find where I belong and who I am. Because of the arts, I now have the courage to try out for new things like a solo in the fall concert, a part in the musical, or even paint a bowl of oranges in art class. It's because of the arts that I have courage, and I have gained not only new friends but family too. This place has given me so much despite the fact that I've always done well in the arts. I've struggled academically. I come to school every day to classes of 20 kids, and I'm already struggling with my ADHD. By adding more kids, I feel like I lose my right to learn and I ask a question if I'm struggling. I feel as if though I ask a question and I don't understand it, then I won't, because the teacher won't understand me because 29 other kids might already. My best friend has an individual educational plan, which is an IEP for those of you who do not know. Due to her IEP and her depression, I see her struggle every day because of her disadvantage, and by taking away her IEP and one-on-one time with a teacher, she loses multiple chances to succeed. I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of kids depend on these after-school clubs, sports, and proper academic support, and a lot of them wouldn't be here where they are today, including me. Yes, there are some changes that need to be made, but not these ones. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, my name is Richard Pete. I live at 371 Hill Street. I've been here 20 years, and I have 2 kids in the high school. And this is basically what I want to say. This is the worst proposal I've ever heard in my life. closing 2 schools like the Prince Street School, and both of my kids went, and it was wonderful for them. Okay? Closing major programs, firing 100 teachers. These are the best teachers around here. They're excellent. Firing 100 of them because of what? Because of what? A quote, projected budget deficit. Projected, not known. On a projection, you fire 100 people. Projected budget of $5 million a year. Okay? That seems a lot of money. But think of this. There are 15,000 parcels that are taxed in this town, in this city. How much is that per parcel? $350. 96 cents a day. Based on a deficit of 96 cents a day, these people want to fire hundreds of people and ruin the educational system. School committee, you're supposed to stand up for better education. This is not a better education. This is ransacking education. Oppose it. That's why we voted for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, close this portion of the meeting, public forum. Now move on to public communications from the superintendent.
Random communications to the chair.
Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report, just looking forward to the...
Drive.
Yes, for the activities for this week. We have senior graduation rehearsals on both Thursday and Friday. Graduation is scheduled for Saturday, June 3rd. We've checked the forecast. Right now, forecast looks pretty good for Saturday. We'll keep an eye on it. And Dr. Chris Lord, principal of the high school, will continue to communicate with parents as we move forward. So, big week this week. A lot of events in the schools around the district. So, as I have always said, pay attention to the calendars, and we'll look forward to seeing parents and students and grandparents, etc., at graduation on Saturday.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. We'll now move on to the fiscal year 18 budget. We're going to, originally this started as a finance committee meeting. You want to explain that, Kristen? I'll turn it over to you.
So we need the opportunity to talk about this, and I just want to say no one up here wants these cuts. Nothing's been decided on. This is what's proposed to close a gap, and we definitely need more money, and I think we all know that. It's just a matter of balancing how we get it and how we move into the new year successfully. So we need to have the finance portion of this, but every member of this committee is very important to it, so whether it's a full committee meeting where everyone can participate. So ready to go? Okay. So Glenn, do you have a microphone? So I think what's important for us to do tonight is to talk about... I can't do that.
It's really low.
Careful. Mine will.
I think so. Better?
No.
So I think what we need to do tonight is talk about the list of suggestions that I think we have given to the administration, and I know the community has given. And the other thing I'd like to do is if we could pull out the transportation part of the deficit so we know what our operating budget deficit actually is. And if you want to give an update on meeting with the task force so this committee knows how much work we need to do, what the time frame is for us to be able to cut back on that. If you have, whatever your update is for the task force.
Do you mean the consultants that came?
Yes, sorry.
Just a little bit of a clarification. I've been asked to put together a budget with the superintendent's cabinet, and the basic reason is that costs go up, and the revenue that we will be getting under the net school spending requirement is less than 1%, and our costs are going up between 2.5% and 3.5%. So when you have a $442,000 increase in the net school spending requirement, and your health insurance alone is going up $860,000, your salaries, wages, step increases, et cetera, are going up over $2 million, the costs are outpacing the revenues. So that's why we're faced with the reducing expenditures. I don't believe anyone at this table or anyone in this city wants to make the type of reductions that need to be made in order to bring this budget into balance. Do you want me to go down the list of questions?
Why don't we start with transportation first, just to be able to understand that completely? Our anticipated amount is $5,050,000?
I would use the same amount this year, it's $4.84 million. Even though the costs are, in the contracts go up 4% on average, we're working with consultants, paid for in large part by a grant, to try and reduce the number of buses that we utilize and to try and increase efficiencies in the vans that drive our students to out-of-district schools. We projected saving a little over $200,000 in the superintendent's proposed budget, and I believe we'll be able to do that based on the information we shared over the past 2 weeks. So I would use this year's number flatline, $2.84 million.
And of that, you have counted both the city funding and the Medicaid of about $4 million?
I'm simply talking about the expense.
Right, and I'm talking about trying to figure out our deficit. So of the 4.8, we'll say
For this year or for next year?
for next year.
I thought we weren't including transportation in the budget.
I'm trying to pull it out, exactly. So I'm trying to pull out the amount of the deficit that we're counting for transportation.
As I understand it, the past 2 years, transportation has been budgeted at $3.24 million.
Yeah.
But I think, Kristen, since transportation is not included in the net school spending budget, so all of it would be a deficit, because what we utilize is school choice money to compensate for what the city gives us through what they budget and with the Medicaid.
Hold on. Last year, and I pulled this out of the budget, this is what was online. What was requested, the superintendent's request was $3.2 million. And then there was Medicaid, Medicare reimbursement for $800,000. That's $4 million. So this is the surprising piece is, I don't understand where this other, that's what was requested. That's what I put in the budget.
Well, I think that we probably didn't do a good job requesting what we needed. Costs escalated faster than we anticipated, and
I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is, what was requested was $3.2 million, and then there was another $800,000 for Medicare reimbursement for a total of $4 million.
what I'm trying to do right now
So
is
any funds that were transferred out were done because they weren't in the budget.
I understand, but and I'm trying to do a better job for 18, and that would be, we've got a proposed $5 million deficit, we've been told. And what I'm trying to do is figure out if in that deficit we've included the $800,000 in Medicaid that you've told us that you'd give us. So right now, Glenn, are you thinking that we are going to have an $800,000 deficit, or is it a part of our deficit $1.6 million? And Eileen, you're right, it's not net school spending, that's why I want to pull it out. Because
Right.
I want to find out what our operating budget deficit is, not keep transportation totally separate.
But since it doesn't come out of sort of our budget technically, we're paying some of it off.
For
I guess
18, I don't want the deficit for transportation to touch our operating budget. In the $5 million, they've included that transportation deficit. So I want to pull it out to see what our operating deficit is, which we shouldn't include it in our deficit. That's what I'm trying to say, because it's not part of the net school spending. Oh, Heather, go ahead. Well, I think Glenn's still looking.
I just want to make a clarification about last year's budget. The superintendent did not propose that budget. We had a discussion about a budget. I made a motion that was seconded, and we were not allowed to vote on the budget because it was over net school spending. And the chair took the budget to the city council on his own and proposed a net school spending budget to the city council. I just want to make sure that that's clear, that that was not
Well, I'll submit this document for the record. What it says is 2017 administrators' budget request is $3,155,755,000, and then the business manager's request was $3,155,755. I'll submit this as a record to the clerk. So I don't want to argue over the whole thing, but that's what was, and then on top of that, we appropriated another $800,000. That's $4 million. So I don't want to argue over it. This is what was submitted to me.
I'm just making the point that we did not vote on the budget. You took, I believe those numbers. You took the budget and submitted it yourself without our vote. I'm just making that clear.
Wendy?
I just want to also clarify that where those numbers were the proposed net school spending budget, which, as Heather said, had failed at a 5-4 vote, and we didn't get to vote on a higher amount. And the other thing I want to clarify is that $860,000 that was allocated back, it was not a burden to the city to give that to us. It wasn't sitting in free cash. It wasn't like tax-based money. That was the Medicaid money that the schools generated through services rendered to children that then was, by the way the law is written, it comes into the city and then is given to us. But it wasn't, it came in as a deposit and then came back to us. So it was not a burden on the local tax base. And this is money that got used for transportation, but this is money that is generated by services we are providing in the schools for kids with special needs. And I want to make sure that it's clear where this, so that it doesn't sound like we were given this gift by the city of $860,000. This was money we generated.
Nope, nobody ever said it was a gift.
We don't have to.
Let's do some quick math, okay? You asked for 3.2 million. The budget, 3.2 million. That's what's the request. It does not count towards net school spending. Nobody had to pass this budget on the net school spending because transportation doesn't count. The request was made by the administrator and the superintendent and the business manager for 3.2. You're $1,800,000 off.
There's no doubt in my mind we did not do a good job last year expressing
$1,800,000 off.
What I want to do though is think about 18 now. So we have a commitment of $4 million from the city for hopefully about $4.8 million in busing. If we take the $800,000 out of the current deficit for our operating budget plan, did you, in that $5 million that we've been talking about for the deficit, and did you include the $800 in Medicaid reimbursement already or not?
The Medicaid reimbursement is not a revenue that's included when we present our budget.
I can't hear you, Glenn, I'm sorry.
The Medicaid reimbursement money is not included as part of the budget discussion. And as I understand, it's always been provided by the mayor and the city council once free cash is determined in the spring.
So the expenses for next year aren't 3.2, they're 5 million, correct? Rounded off?
Yeah, 4,876,413.
All right, and so, correct? Yeah. And so if the Medicaid money comes in, is reappropriated, we're now down to 4 million, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a deficit in transportation of about $800,000 right now. I just want to pull that out of, when we start talking about our operating budget deficit, I don't want this to affect what we're talking about in terms of teaching and programming and those types of things. I just don't want to put numbers in your mouth and say that, I'm not sure if that's an $800,000 gain we just made with a Medicaid, a commitment for Medicaid, or not.
It sounds like it is, yes. Okay. We'll be collecting that, we're collecting that money right now. We'll have a balance as of June 30th as to what's been collected by the school department this fiscal year. That money is provided by the city. It's designated as free cash sometime in the spring. And historically, the mayor and city council do provide that money as an appropriation to offset the shortfall in transportation.
So if we have we were talking about a $5 million deficit as a whole round whole number before. We can now take $800,000 out of it because it's transportation related completely. And then are we taking another $800,000 off because of the Medicaid reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay.
But if I might, Kristen, just point out some facts for the people who
Sure.
have not been involved in your finance committee meetings over the past few months. The FY17 budget that I saw when I came here was $3.234 million. When I came in and did my projections with the Finance Committee, we projected spending $4.876 million, which was a $1.6 million and change difference between what was budgeted. Just for reference, even though $3.234 million was budgeted this year, we actually spent $4.3 million last year. So it was about $1 million difference. And basically, you take a look, the $1 million difference was covered by the Medicaid reimbursement funds in the spring, and we carried a deficit over. Our deficit last year was in transportation.
Yes.
And we paid $245,000 of transportation expenses, last year's transportation expenses, with this year's school choice money.
And next year, we're not going to have that opportunity, so that's why I want to make sure we keep it separate, because we'll be using that to pay off our deficit from this year, in essence. There might be a little bit left over, I know, but we won't know those numbers until the end of the year, correct?
But speaking of this year's deficit,
Yep.
we provided, the Finance Committee reviewed this on May 1st. If we have an anticipated projected expense of $4.9 million, rounded, we budgeted $3.2 million. You subtract the $53,000 we collected in November and December for user fees, and you subtract the supplemental city appropriation of $860,000. We still have $727,850 in the transportation shortfall this year.
Correct. Which we'll have to pay off with next year's revolving funds, because we have no other way to pay that ourselves.
Well, we wait till the end of the fiscal year to find out exactly what the shortfall is. Got another month of it. But at the end of the close of the calendar year, we'll know better, when all the accounts close out.
Okay. All right. So,
And then we'll address that then.
so for the operating budget deficit, we're talking about a $3.4 million deficit then, with a commitment of $800 for Medicaid, and then keeping that $800,000 deficit sitting in transportation alone.
I don't follow those numbers.
We had a $5 million deficit. We received $800 for Medicaid, which will go towards transportation. You said you included transportation in that $5 million?
I included the increase in transportation, the $1.6 million, assuming that the 3.2 was level funded. The budget proposal with the $5 million necessary to reduce included the difference between what was appropriated this year and what will be spent this year. That's $1.7 million difference. So that's floated into next year because there's no revenue source to cover that.
Right, but I think what Chris is trying to do is separate. So what we're looking for is the number to pull out of that. Everyone's using this number of $5 million for next year that's got to be cut. That number needs to pull, we're trying to pull that off, to look at what the number is that we need to start with this evening so we can finally get to some numbers to submit for a budget.
Because there's nothing we can do to pay for transportation. I mean, that's one of the things we're trying to do here. I want to, if we've got a $5 million deficit that includes 1.6 in transportation, we just got $800,000 in terms of Medicaid, so we can reduce that. And now we need to figure out our operating budget, because we don't have the funds to pay for busing.
So what is the amount, pull out the
For next
deficit
year,
for
not for this
transportation, what is that amount? That's the amount we start with this evening.
To make sure I understand, if we're projecting next year's expenses at the same level we're spending this year, let's round it at $4.9 million. We're going to find savings there. Reduce it by $800,000 for this year's Medicaid reimbursement. The mayor's committed to that. Reduces it to $4.1 million.
Yep.
If you budget $4.1 million, we're all set. But we only budgeted $3.2 million this year. So there's another $800,000 to $900,000 that
And I
needs
want
to
to
be
carry
covered.
that, I want to carry that deficit in a separate page, in a separate column, far away from our operating budget, because we can't pay that ourselves.
You also have to consider the $727,000 deficit this year, because if we don't pay for it by June 30th, it rolls into a deficit into next year. We don't have funds available for that, so it further complicates the issue.
Well, I believe that our school choice money for next year equates to about what our deficit is, so we could pay off our deficit with next year's school choice money.
Right, but for the sake of discussion for tonight, the deficit for this year we need to put aside, because we don't know what our accounts are going to close out at. And then we'll be better to determine at the end of the fiscal year what that deficit really is, if it's 700,000, or is it 5, or is it 3, based on our accounts as they close out.
But that will directly affect our school choice and our ability to pay for things next year. That's just the point that I want to make.
It might not. I'm just saying, just sit tight, because we
Okay.
don't know what that final number is,
Okay.
and we won't know.
So, just to Kristen's point, she wants to pull out transportation. The numbers are 745,000 this year, we're deferring to next year. And I had 1.2 million, but that didn't include the 800,000 in the Medicare reimbursement. So we're looking at a number of about 1.2 million off of the 5 million is transportation. I think one other important thing to remember, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of this, we have a general fund budget, which was submitted to the mayor, and the city council approved it. There was a good portion of last year's budget and the budget before that was paid out of our revolving accounts, which are not visible on any of these documents. And that's unfortunate. So if you look at health insurance costs, they do not depict the true cost of health insurance. They were paid for with revolving account money, school choice funds, we took money out of grants, and that was the contingency when the business manager, the former business manager had said we should be using the money in our revolving accounts. My concern was that we're going to lose the detail to support line items, and that's exactly what has happened. That is one of the things that is attributed to this situation today.
Okay, so do we have a number yet to extract from this? Because we've got to get to the number of where we begin to develop a budget. So
So the number in my head is 3.2 if we're...
3.8, if it's 1.2.
Right, I guess I was using school choice next year to pay this year. So, okay, either way. But if we can now go through the list of suggestions and just get some type of monetary value for any of them, and to know if you've already reduced them from the budget you presented to us. And I don't know if that's you or if that's Jim.
Would you like me just to go down the list of the 22 recommendations?
And I think that there were other ones that, came from the community or from the website.
Would you like me to start with the page that you mailed me?
Sure.
Okay, what is the cost of one day of teachers' salaries? And I guess the discussion is for a furlough day.
Yes.
So given that teacher salaries are approximately $30 million, one furlough day would save approximately $160,000. That's something you need to negotiate with the association.
And have there been any conversation, do we need to have conversation, Jim, about approaching, I know one union did send us a proposal about trying to help with savings.
I have approached a couple of unions, but the only union that has come forward was the email that we received over the weekend.
So that's something I think that we need to keep on our agenda as we talk more later. Okay, Glenn, thanks.
can we set up any meetings with the unions to ask if there's...
Yeah, I've reached out to every union president. I've been in communication with them since the beginning of May. Thus far, we've had meetings with the Secretaries Association, with the Teachers Association. We have a meeting scheduled this week with Unit B. Paras and tutors, we've been in communication with, but we haven't had a meeting. And we started to meet with HR and the custodians. I believe they had a meeting today. So we're reaching out and meeting with them on an ongoing basis.
I thought some of the information got sort of muddled last time. I think we put a lot of it on the teachers union, that the increased cost and salary increases and wages and lanes and steps was $2 million, and it was all on them. That's totally across the board.
That's
correct?
across the board. That's the entire
I
district.
think that
Yeah.
got a little confusing, and we put a lot of that on the teachers union. That was sort of unfair. That's right across the board, everywhere.
The only portion that is primarily teachers is the lane changes, because that's a factor that's included in their contract. But there's step increases that ultimately impact many of the associations, as well as we had factored in a 2% cost of living adjustment for all of the associations across the district, based upon either contractual or anticipated contractual.
But it's $2 million across the board is the increase.
That's,
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't think it was fair that sort of all got caught up, and it sounded like it was all
no, it
their
wasn't all
increase.
teachers,
Okay.
no.
The other questions, including question 1, are all related to working with the union, the teachers union. Question number 2 is, can we approach teachers about sharing positions? That will reduce layoffs, health insurance, and unemployment. I'd like to turn that back over to the superintendent, because he's talked at length about that in our school leadership team meetings.
Yeah, that was primarily a idea that had come up through the school committee, and it's essentially probably the best example is younger teachers who want to have more time at home with a growing family. They would pair up with a peer and be able to co-teach during the course of the school year. We've had a couple of examples of that in some of our elementary schools, and it's been very successful. And I believe the school committee member who had brought it up had said an area district had been successful with that. So that was a suggestion that came up, but we haven't really gone into detail with the teachers union on that particular recommendation yet. So.
Okay.
Third question, what is our current lease agreement for the Leominster Center for Excellence? And can we move the program to the high school or Gallagher? The current lease agreement is for 5 years, locked in currently at $1 per square foot for fully renovated educational space, which is a credit to the Whitney Company for working with us on that. Again, the proposal was put out by the city, and we got a wonderful, wonderful building, wonderful program. But we're locked in. We agreed to pay rent for 5 years. We're currently renting 5,900 square feet, and it's $1 a square foot for 12 months. It comes out to $78,000 per rent, and we'd still be paying that rent whether or not we relocated the programs. It will not be relocating Gallagher. That was something that was considered. The facility is not suitable for education. And moving it to the high school, I think that's the antithesis of what the program is all about. Small, sheltered.
We're locked in. Okay, 4.
If AP classes are affected, can we give those students the chance to use Edgenuity? I'll push this back off to the superintendent. It's academic.
What was the question on that one?
Something about ingenuity.
AP classes on engineering.
We offer the students Edgenuity instead of AP classes.
Yeah, well, Ingenuity is a virtual platform that we have been advancing to, been highly utilized at the middle school level, primarily for world language, and it was piloted at Skyview Middle School, and we're hoping to advance it into Samoset Middle School, as well as we've been using the virtual learning platform to bring back a number of homeschool students that have registered with the district and are utilizing the software platform for educational purposes, as well as some students who ultimately are homebound because of illness or similar circumstances, and they have been using the software. Now, we've also had another virtual platform that we have been utilizing at Leominster High School over the past years. It's from Edmentum, better known as Plato, and we've decided to centralize onto Ingenuity during the course of next school year. So, the options are open. The mayor has requested a survey which we've completed with parents and with the community at large in regard to their interest in virtual learning. So it's really up to the use of teachers as to how they utilize it in the classroom, how they utilize it across the board, that we can implement Ingenuity throughout the district. So we can look at the specific costs of that depending upon parameters as to what the committee wants us to
And I think the concern is
identify.
if AP classes, I think Leominster's offered the most robust offering of AP classes of any school around. And so if some of them are eliminated, you know, I know at Skyview you've got 4 different languages being learned in the same classroom. You know, are students able to take AP classes online? And,
We would rather opt to have AP classes be available to all students, as you just stated. You know, I'm not sure that this is a reasonable substitute, but yes, it could be utilized for that as we move forward.
Actually, let me take a step back because I'm not even sure. You know,
Yeah,
we
I'm not
heard-
too sure of what
We
the-
heard that AP classes would be eliminated. Is that just what we heard, or is that?
No, I
is
think
there a
that,
possibility, or-
and I answered a couple of committee member questions on that, and whenever, we have a master schedule all ready to go for next school year. With the reductions in the staffing, when we enter those reductions into the scheduling system ultimately is going to look for classes with lower enrollment, which technically in a lot of cases are the AP classes, and the system ultimately equalizes the participation and the enrollment in all courses across the board in order to make up for the gaps in the staffing. So out of that, yes, there was a reduction in some of the AP classes as well as increases in class size in some of our other classes, primarily freshman classes, because of the changes in the scheduling program. And Dr. Chris Lod's probably around here somewhere, and he's in front here, so if you have more specific questions on the scheduling, he's the individual who has been driving that process, and he can answer that for you. But essentially, we've gone over this multiple times so that we both have an understanding of the process. And when you make dramatic changes to the schedule, these are the type of things that fall up. It's not that we're against advanced placement classes or against students in advanced placement classes. We would like to have even more of a robust offering and schedule than what we already have. But based upon what I had to recommend to the committee for reductions to meet net school spending, this is the impact of it. So.
But the engineering doesn't, it could be an option.
Ingenuity could be a solution, yes. It depends on what falls out and then what we can do to offer students similar opportunities.
That was if Ingenuity had the capability to do that.
Okay, 5?
Question number 5 of 22 is the cost of eliminating the lead cluster teacher stipends. Back to the superintendent on that one.
The lead cluster teachers, just for the benefit of the audiences here, are essentially a part of our innovation status within the Center for Technical Education Innovation. With innovation school status, we gain a lot of autonomies that provide us with capabilities beyond what I call the cardboard box that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education puts us in, so that we're very, very, very regulated. With the innovation status of the school, we have autonomies that allow us to go beyond what is typically allowed in public education. So with Center for Technical Education Innovation, one of the autonomies that we have is to set up a governance group, which ultimately teachers are empowered to pretty much govern the running of the school on a ongoing basis in conjunction with the administrators in the school. So as we had department heads established at Leominster High School, we also built a team of lead cluster teachers at Center for Technical Education Innovation. They represent the four core areas within the school, and ultimately they work directly with Dave Diandacher and Dan Beishan with the ongoing operation of the school. So they're paid similar stipends as the department heads at the Leominster High School. So if you eliminate the lead cluster leaders, ultimately you're comparing them to the department heads in Leominster High School.
Okay, and do you know the cost of that?
I would have to check the contract.
Do you know how many there are? I don't.
David, we have 5, 6, with the, yeah. You're gonna have to come up though, David, because,
10%, so it'd be $20,000.
okay, thank you.
I can yell.
We know you can, David.
Okay, I just want to make something perfectly clear for everybody in the building right now. We have 5 lead cluster teachers who dedicate themselves to the operation of CTEI and all the programs that we have and that we try to innovate. Those lead cluster teachers are not paid their stipends with local funds. That means it has nothing to do with the budget deliberations that are going on right now. Lead cluster teachers are paid with Perkins funds. And these are funds that we get every year for being a Chapter 74 program school. So that's where the funds come from to pay for those teachers. Thank you.
And actually, Dave, so that Perkins money has to be used for very specific reasons?
Yes, just like all grants, there are stipulations on how you can and cannot spend the money. And they would not be paying for lead cluster teachers if at any time we had used local funds to pay for them. Because once you use local funds, then you can't use the Perkins funds anymore.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Dave, that's only for CTEI, correct? There's only one lead cluster teacher in CTEI that's paid for out of Perkins?
No, we have 5.
You have 5? Well, I know there are others in the district.
No, the department heads, Sue?
Okay, I know we were paying stipends to, okay, maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's just at the 9 to 12 level, we have the department heads at the high school, which are traditional. That's been in place for a long period of time. When we ultimately converted CTE over to Innovation School, we formed the governance group, which is the lead cluster leaders. Thank you, David, for clarifying, because we've gone back and forth regarding the payment of the stipends out of Perkins. So thank you for clarifying that. But ultimately, they were comparable positions at the high school or CTEI. So.
Right, I thought there was some in the middle schools.
No, I think what you're alluding to is that there was another part of the teacher empowerment process that we have implemented through the district capacity project is a leadership team type of structure which originated at Skyview Middle School, ultimately was implemented at Samoset Middle School, and we're ultimately promoting in other schools. But that was a stipend of $500 for a group of teachers who participated in ultimate decision-making in each of the schools. And that was, I think, what you're addressing, Sue, and that was a stipend that was negotiated with the union, ultimately was approved by school committee, I think, in January of this year. So I believe that might have been the other group of stipends that you were concerned about. If not, just let me know and I'll see what else you might be alluding to, so.
Okay, thank you.
Next question?
Thank you, Dave. Number 6?
Number 6, what is the cost of keeping the 3 IT tech support that are proposed to be reduced to support day-to-day operations in, I guess it's elementary, middle schools? But between $115,000 and $125,000 if you include salaries and benefits. The next question is, what is the cost of K-12 Insight? Has it been eliminated yet? And are we using the Google app, which is free? Do not know.
I'll take care of that one. The K-12 Insight has been a software initiative that we've had the last couple of years, which ultimately did a lot of baseline surveying of the community to provide the school committee with data as to the community perceptions of the Leominster Public Schools, which also included student surveying, staff surveying, as well as parent community surveying. The most recent survey we did was a year ago, which was really targeted more towards the community at large. This particular year, we retained K-12 Insight primarily to support the Let's Talk communication portion that's tied into our district-wide website, which pretty much allowed an ongoing feedback mechanism for individuals, even as part of this budget process. I think we also used it on the Good Friday holiday and a couple of other changes that we made during the course of the year to allow students, staff, community to be able to communicate with us and provide feedback on different initiatives. That portion this year was supported through a invoice of about $10,000, which I believe was misrepresented in a public comment. I think it was represented as $40,000. We dramatically reduced that in FY17 to 10. And if the school committee decides that that communication initiative isn't necessary any longer, we can end the contract. Just remember that part of the superintendent goals, which I've provided to the committee on an ongoing basis, includes that standard 4 of the educator evaluation initiatives that require the ability to be able to communicate and reach out to the community and get community feedback on the work that we're doing in the district. And this was one of those mechanisms. But if the committee decides to eliminate it, then so be it. So.
I just think that all of the Google apps, this was one of the things I'd asked, all of the different things that Google is doing, if we can replace even $10,000, if that's what it is, with a free process and get the same kind of service, then we really do need to look at that.
Yeah, through the chair, we didn't even use it for surveying this year. So ultimately what I'm saying is and actually we paid it out of a grant this year, so it didn't even come out of the general fund. So it's not even part of the discussion for FY17, but nevertheless, moving forward, the finance chair has asked us to look at these particular line items, and if it's an item that can be eliminated, then we'll eliminate it.
Right, and if the Google can do that, I mean, it's worth looking at to see what it can do for us because of the cost.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
Question number 8, again for the superintendent. Evaluate whether we need Play-Doh at the high school.
Yeah, I think we just spoke to that, and that is the Edmentum Play-Doh software was an additional cost of $20,000. that was supporting the academic learning center at Leominster High School. Dr. Chris Lord, myself, Tim Blake, who has been driving a lot of our work in virtual learning this year. We've met with the vendors. We've decided to consolidate that to eliminate the cost. But once again, the $20,000 was approved by school committee to come out of a revolving account for FY17 and not out of the general fund, but it's still a duplicate cost and it can be eliminated for next year.
And I think the other thing that's important is a lot of these things might come out of grant funding, but we might be able to pay for other things
That's
using that
true.
grant money too. So again, this goes back to Sue's point where it's hard to manage, that grant line and offsetting things, that general fund line and offsetting with grants. Okay. Half a day kindergarten, oh, sorry, Lauren.
My question is as follows. Eliminating that Play-Doh, how is it going to affect the students? And how is it going to affect their grades?
No, as before, Mr. Poole, through what we talked about a few minutes ago, we have multiple virtual learning platforms that are running in the district right now. I retain those for the benefit of giving teachers an opportunity to be able to run those parallel systems so that we weren't making dramatic changes right away. But during the course of the year, we've discussed the consolidation of those platforms, and we've decided to focus on Ingenuity because it's a very robust system. They recently acquired a software firm that supports elementary education. We're supporting middle school at the present time, and it can support high school CTE courses at the vocational technical education level, etc. So it's really eliminating costs by consolidating, and it's not going to impact students at all. It'll just provide them with more opportunities.
I'm just concerned about the scaffolding. As you're saying, it's bridging it out, but is it a guarantee that the students are not going to be impacted? Because, there's Ingenuity, there's Play-Doh, and there's a couple of other things. You're saying you're going to combine them. Their learning processes, are they going to be... I didn't make any sense what I was saying?
No. I was waiting for you to finish your
Chris,
statement.
well, Chris was saying something. I just want to know. I didn't someone
No,
understood?
I think that all students are affected by all of this. I think that if you switch software, definitely some students will be affected, but some students are affected by the loss of AP, and some students, everyone's affected, sadly.
But it's an individual effect.
Yeah.
They are.
Not all students are alike.
Absolutely right.
But I think the most important thing that we need to keep in mind is that many of our students who are going to be entering, and this is a conversation we've had at school committee multiple times, and this is why the mayor had requested further information on it, but all students are going to be faced with online courses when they get into a college environment. And the majority of major degree programs are all online now. So they're either online, they're hybrid, there's not too many dedicated classroom courses in college any longer. I just went through a program at Northeastern.
My daughter just
and the
graduated
majority.
with one online course. That is
All
not
right,
true.
excuse me, just let the superintendent speak, please.
So what we're trying to do is provide all of these opportunities for students at the high school level so that they will be equipped to be effective in the lecture hall, be effective in a virtual learning type of environment, as well as be effective in a hybrid learning environment where a portion of it is online and a portion of it is classroom. So if we properly, as you say, Ron, scaffold our virtual learning platforms, it's only going to make our students more prepared, as well as we're retaining virtual high school, which has been an ongoing program at Leominster High School for many years. We have a faculty member who really keeps our costs down by running one of the courses, and because of her involvement in running a course, it drives our per student cost down. So we're retaining that. So there's a lot of opportunities here that we're retaining and giving students the pre-training that they need really before they enter into either a 2-year or 4-year college.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Next question. Next question, number 9. Can we go back to half-day kindergarten? With creative choices being an extension of the school day for parents? And can we sustain K with the elimination of the kindergarten grant this year? I believe the big push by the state is to have all kindergarten students access full-day K. That's one of the reasons they provided kindergarten grants, with the intent that at some point the district would assume those costs. And when I say assume those costs, understand that a full-day kindergarten student provides more revenue under net school spending than a half-day kindergarten student. So just making that transition from half-day to full-day, and you've already gone through the growing pains of that. But let me get back to a question that the school committee's finance committee made at their last meeting. The $500,000 appropriation by the city council provided last September was formally designated by the finance committee at their last meeting. At $200,000 of that was to offset the costs of the kindergarten teachers that were no longer being paid for through the grant. $200,000 was to increase the funding for substitute teachers because we had already overexpended that account as of 2 months ago. And $100,000 went to replace the cut in the athletic coaches. So the $500,000 has formally been appropriated, $200,000 for substitute teachers, $200,000 for kindergarten teachers, and $100,000 to replace the reduction in athletic coaching.
So Glenn, even with the appropriation of the 500, which could have been used for many, many things, we were forced to pick up the state cutting, was it like 250 something thousand?
Well, yes.
230. And have we rolled that 230 into our salary line? Because that's part of our deficit problem this year, was losing that, in September or whenever we found out. And then...
Yes. Those teachers are full-time teachers in full-day K, and they're part of our budget.
Okay, so they're rolled into the salary line, they're out of the grants.
Yes.
And I would just say that this committee worked very, very hard a number of years ago to bring full-day kindergarten to our community. And I think at that point, and I still do value early childhood learning, and it was really essential for helping our children learn and stay competitive and be prepared, for a great more deal of rigor hitting the first grade. So I would hate to see us go backwards.
I think the key to that suggestion is that half-day kindergarten with creative choices being an extension of the school day at the parent's expense. So I don't think it's saying to eliminate kindergarten or whole day. I think what it's saying is the half-day will be supported by the district, and creative choices, which is another wonderful program we have, would be an opportunity for parents to keep their children here, extend their day, but it would be at a cost.
Which would impact many of our low-income families.
We'd have to assume that cost. But again, I think we just have to think outside the box. I think the full-day kindergarten is a unfunded mandate. Several years ago, we were getting $525,000, and now we're getting nothing.
No, we're getting $5,000 to $6,000 per student in net school spending. It is now being funded under net school spending.
Because those students, when they were halftime, didn't count towards net school spending.
I think 2 half-times counted for 1 full-time though, so we're getting half more.
Right. Well, the point being, if you decide to go back to half-day K, the first year you did that, you'd benefit. But then the Sims report for October would show half-day kids and you would lose the money the following year. So the money's now built into the net school spending requirement, and you've already gone through your growing pains to get there.
I was gonna say, if it wasn't worked into our salary line yet, that'd be different, but if you worked into it.
It is.
I think so.
Question number 10. I don't know if that's a question, but it reads, maintain district-wide homogeneous groupings of kids, like LEAP, to achieve economies of scale. Superintendent can speak on this, but they were devised for that purpose.
I think the other part too, that I want to add on is, for like our English language learners, do we have them going to one school more than they're spread out? Do we need more teaching staff because we do have them spread through the district?
Well, right now, we have separate programs supporting accelerated learners, supporting ELs, supporting specific special education groups, etc. So, I think as part of the future perspective, we're looking at the cost one way or the other as to how those groups can continue to be supported in inclusive schools. Right now, we have those programs separated. It's adding to transportation costs by moving students to certain schools to get to certain programs. So we're trying to take a hard look at that and figure out if there's a better way that we can save money and make a better experience or provide a better experience for students.
So I guess it would be just the transportation cost offset the extra staff you need.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at to determine, but it's not going to impact FY18.
Okay.
Next question. Just the folks in the audience, this is what the Finance Committee does almost on a weekly basis. They sit in the room and do this for 2.5 and 3 hours. And it may not be the most exciting stuff, but we appreciate you listening to what they're doing. Next question is eliminate the chair stipends at the high school and reallocate the funds to save a dean position. Superintendent, do you feel comfortable?
I don't know what the chair stipends are. I'm not sure what the question was on that one.
Use chair stipends to pay for a dean, basically.
Chair?
Like the chair of
Does
high
that
school.
mean department heads?
Department heads? Well, we've already had the discussion on the lead cluster teachers, same as department heads at the Leominster High School, stipends the same. So that would have to be something that would be, a lot of these things you have to remember within the teachers union contract. So we're going to have to do some impact bargaining if we're going to change any of those parameters within the teacher's contract. And that is a situation that doesn't happen overnight. So the impact on FY18 could be limited depending on how quickly we can sit down with the union and bring some of these suggestions to the table.
Okay, 12.
Put the Parent Information Center back into the schools and use less resources? As an outsider coming in, I think the PIC Center is one of the stars of the school district as far as efficiencies. I've seen firsthand the work that's done there in registering students. They're the core for determining school choice students, which we depend on almost with $1.8 million, and more if you consider the additional allocation we get if they happen to be economically disadvantaged. I can't imagine it would be done more efficiently at the schools, my perspective, but I think the superintendent can share his opinion on that.
And Glenn, I'll just add, I've heard a lot of feedback where the PIC does a great job, but the schools still end up having to chase down information. So it's just some people, I think everyone actually asked this question who submitted something. Is it redundant? And I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying that's the feedback that we hear, and that's why the question's on the table.
Yeah, well, I'll make a few comments on that because we purposely formed the Parent Information Center in order to create more efficiencies across the district. When you're decentralizing registration, validation of low-income families, and all of the related data associated with students that are coming into the district, and it's pretty hard to maintain consistency across 10 different sites. So that's why we opted to consolidate. I've had experience with this in a previous district. It's been very, very effective. And I agree with Glenn's statements on the efficiencies that we've gained. We've also had a consultant come in at a very minimal cost, so I'll state that, who has looked at all of our Chapter 70 revenue information in regard to what they call SIMS, which is data that we report to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, which ultimately creates the numbers for our Chapter 70 revenue via the foundation budget formula every year. And he applauded the work that has been done within the Parent Information Center. We have some excellent staff who has done a phenomenal job of validating the data coming in, the status of parents in regard to low-income eligibility. And I think the other important statement to make that I'm sure that none of the members of the community are aware of is that Leominster has also been impacted this year by the change by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that has impacted a lot of urban districts in regard to the definition of our lower income eligibility. And it used to be based upon, I think, something that a lot of people understand, and that is free and reduced lunch status. And we would be able to look at a form, look at a family's eligibility. Ultimately, the revenue that we bring in is higher for a low-income student, and it was based upon that simple process of validating a free and reduced lunch application. It's not the case any longer. Now all of those students are identified through state databases. So if a family doesn't apply for assistance within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that parent, that family, who most likely is eligible for low-income status, it just doesn't get picked up by the department, and we don't get the revenue for that student. So that was a dramatic change. It's impacted a lot of urban districts, and it's exacerbated the situation that we've had this year. We continue to work with the department on identifying a better way of validating that data, but right now we're kind of caught in the middle on that. So because of the Parent Information Center, we're able to do a lot of these things. Granted, it's been in place for a couple of years. There's always still ways that we can improve the process, but the only work that ultimately has to be done in the schools is enrollment, and we're looking at even consolidating enrollment via the reorganization that we put forth for the secretaries.
I think Heather and
I just want to make a point that, because I agree as far as the Parent Information Center, I have spent a lot of time up there, and I like the way that, that there's one central place when parents come into the district and they're not quite sure where to go, that we can just say this address and they go right there. We're not explaining, we're not trying to figure out what district they're in, where they need to go, because sometimes they might not end up in the right spot. So it's very frustrating for people. What I did want to mention, in talking to a few of the principals, the one thing that they do miss about that is they miss having that initial face-to-face contact with these students when they first come into the district. So that might be something that we want to explore, because they say that school opens and then all of a sudden it's just this crowd of kids come in, they've never seen them before, they don't know who they are. So the principals definitely do miss that, being able to meet the families when they first come in the district. So that might just be something that we, that you can talk to the senior leadership team about, and maybe come up with some ideas, maybe like a open house day or something, where they can go and meet face-to-face.
Through the chair, that still happens because they register at the Parent Information Center. They're provided the information as to what school they will be attending, and ultimately they go to the school, they meet with the principal or with a administrator within the building, and ultimately they are provided that orientation at the building. So I don't believe, and Gina Werner is responsible for the Parent Information Center. She can speak to this particular point, but I don't think that we're denying any family or overloading any principal with a number of students that are suddenly arriving at their doorstep and they don't know who they are.
Well, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that, when new people are new in the city, and, there's a lot of people that come into the city that Parent Information Center knows. How many people come in 3 days before school starts and they're like, oh,
Well,
I
that's
just
true.
I just moved here 6
Last
weeks
minute.
ago and I have to register my kid. So I think there's just, that's really the point I was making.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to agree with both you, Kristen, and with Heather. I've heard from principals that they wish that they had more ability to meet with the parents and meet with the children when they register. I think it's something that we need to look at on how we can maybe better tweak the Parent Information Center and work with the schools, because I think anybody that comes into a city, whether it's Leominster or someplace else, they're going to look at where their neighborhood school is and take their children and go right to that school thinking they can enroll them there. And to send parents going back and forth to different places, I think that doesn't do us, it doesn't make us look good. I think we need to just maybe re-examine how much the PIC Center does and where we can best serve. And I know the secretaries that are in the schools are calling the PIC Center to say they found this information out about this student, that they're living in Fitchburg but coming to Leominster and not showing up as school choice. I think the secretaries in the school are doing that and working with the PIC Center, and I think they do a very good job of it. So I think that encourages us to keep the secretaries in the schools to help continue that work.
I just want to point out one of the important things that has been happening in the PIC over the last couple of months is, as the superintendent mentioned, the funding that gets figured for students who are considered economically disadvantaged. We've been losing a lot, and over the past, and Glenn can speak to this, there's been an employee in the PIC who has recovered a great deal of this, found these students and identified them, and has been recovering a great deal of money that we would have lost otherwise.
Close. The number of students eligible for free and reduced lunch has increased significantly since the beginning of the year. However, the snapshot the state takes of our SIMS data is as of October 1st.
Right, but those students have to be identified by October 1st, and so more and more of those have been identified, which will help
Us next year, which will help the FY19 budget.
Right.
Just as an example, there are approximately 1,000 students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch that are not on the state's rolls for food stamps, transitional assistance, foster care, etc.
Right.
If we got 100 of those students on the economically disadvantaged rolls, which the PIC Center can do, that's $420,000. If you got 200, that's $840,000. That's one of the focuses of the PIC Center that we've been working on. It's not only to reduce expenses, but find ways to increase our revenues.
Right, and
That won't be for next year, but the SIMS data submitted October 1st of this year will help the FY19 budget. So we're looking ahead.
Glenn, if maybe somebody brought up the cost. What is the cost? If you said it, I missed it.
Of the PIC Center, we have the main administrator, Gina, who runs it, and then we have 2 secretarial clerks.
So what's the cost?
About $85,000.
How much?
About $85,000.
Total to run it?
No. Other than the administrator.
I'm sorry? There's a motor in the back, I can't hear you.
Okay.
We have an administrator who supervises a number of programs, one of them being the PIC Center. Excluding her salary, I believe we're looking at about $85,000 in salaries for the 2 personnel that work in that department.
And if we disbanded the big center, which I'm not in favor for, then would we need to hire more secretaries back in each of the schools to handle the, I mean, I would assume we could, right, because we decreased the number of secretaries in the individual schools once we developed the big center.
I believe the intent of the PIC Center was to consolidate some of the activities that were done at the school and to enhance the activities that were done for the district. Again, I'll tell you, as someone seeing it firsthand, though they still do talk, as Nona said, with the secretarial staff in the schools. But they do an amazing job verifying student addresses, whether or not they actually live in Leominster, along with the secretaries in the schools. And I think it would be a big loss to lose that particular
I'm not
department.
advocating to change the big center, but I'm just trying to.
I just want to say that I don't think that staff have changed previously. I just want to make sure that we clarify that.
And just another important thing about the PIC Center is that they are bilingual there. So when you have residents that come in and they don't speak the language, that it's really important that that first person that they're meeting is able to greet them and have a conversation with them right away, I think.
Seriously.
So it sounds like we can still
making quite an
fine-tune,
assumption.
talk about that a little bit more later. I'll take the next one, because we actually talked about this one already, work with the city to consolidate payroll, and that involves getting Munis
We're getting close, right, Glenn?
completed.
I mean, we're close, but I think your memo today explained it all. Unison seems like the answer, but it's not easy. It's what everybody wanted. And Glenn can attest to the fact it's not easy.
So definitely not for 18, but possibly for
Oh, no,
19.
I think we're close on our end. According to the municipal consultant, we're close on our end.
Okay.
So did you get back to
Just tell
us
you.
with the, whether it's an 18 or 19 or whatever?
David told me today, we're close.
So could we see
Fine
some cost
tuning.
savings with
Oh,
redundancy?
I never said there was going to be cost savings with Munis. I never said that.
With other payroll.
That's what other people said, is that we weren't doing a good job with our accounting system. And we were going to save all kinds of money. I think Glenn's got a peek at it. This is labor intensive.
So we can look at the possible.
Your output is only as good as your input. Your input's going to be very involving. It's not going to, I think the expectation was there was going to be all kinds of savings, but I haven't done, we've said right along, it isn't. But it would certainly tie the two systems in.
Through the chair, Kristen, I think the only thing that the mayor and I have discussed is if for some reason, right now we're running a payroll system that's separate and independent of the Munis payroll system. The school department runs their payroll on Munis, and then ultimately we provide all the data to the city, and it's re-entered into the independent system. So that would have to be a citywide decision in order to consolidate payroll on Munis, and then we would be able to eliminate the duplicated staff on both sides. But
So
right
that's
now,
above and
that's a
beyond
big
that, then.
decision to me. So that is well beyond the realm of the school department, but that's where the savings would take place because of the consolidation, because of a decision to move towards the uniform payroll system that is embedded within the Munis accounting system. But that, as I said, is not a decision that is up to us to make. We would have to do that citywide.
And I think just in layman's terms, so we do our payroll, how many staff do we have?
Just one.
1,000 employees?
No, 400.
400. 400? In the school district?
800.
800, all right. So what we do is we have one person that does it, one person that keys in our payroll, and then walks it to City Hall, and then we have Harper Payroll, who then rekeys our payroll. So No, we don't pay for 2 people at Harper to rekey our payroll?
We have a contract with Harper that does all our payroll. They issue the checks and
Process.
Right, but
Just
then...
one process. Takes it
So,
over there and gives it to Harper, and Harper issues the checks.
so we're not, there's no redundancy in the payroll at all? We just push a
We
button
check.
and...
I mean, the redundancy only might be that somebody checks to make sure, the checks and balance part. You don't want a computer just saying, yeah, pay all these people, all these things. We have no clue that somebody might have been out sick, or somebody forgot to check in that somebody's been out on a long-term absence or maternity leave. It has to be a checks and balance. The computer doesn't know that somebody's out on maternity leave unless somebody enters that into it. It doesn't know that.
So our person enters it in the computer, and then we push a button, and it goes over to...
We don't
Salem?
know. The checks and balance part is that somebody has to check to make sure that somebody did that. The computer, in other words, what happens is, it'll punch in what your salary is, how many days off you have, it'll punch it all into the system. And it'll just keep paying you. You might not be here. It will keep issuing you, Harper's will keep issuing you checks. The other checks and balance parts of the system is, somebody actually goes through this to make sure that somebody's checking to make sure that if you're out, you're not getting paid, or if you are, you're supposed to earn a different rate. So that's gonna happen no matter what. Because you could be paying somebody that's not here. Because you entered into the information in, September 1st, and it thinks somebody's here, but then somebody's out on maternity leave. Unless somebody makes that change into the system, we don't know. You have to have that balance part, that checks and balance to make sure. And it's happened. It's like invoices. People might fax one in, send one by email, and then submit one by mail. We've actually had school department and other departments in the city pay twice or 3 times. Somebody has to be checking this. So that checks and balance system isn't going to go away.
So again, these are questions that people gave to us too, so I'm not even trying
I
to
don't see
understand.
the cost savings yet. If there is, superintendent and I will be the first ones to take it and put it somewhere else if there's a savings.
Glenn, for 14, I think that you sent an email in your responses, you provided the answers to 14, if you just want to go over those.
The question is, get a highly trained Munis person on staff. And reduce vendor costs. Currently, there's a full-time equivalent position in the business office that's been vacant since early last spring. And my predecessor hired a consultant to work 1 day a week to provide that assistance. I've continued that arrangement until I'm here permanently, in which case I have a recommendation to bring on a full-time replacement, because we're already reducing staff in the business office. The position that is currently vacant, that is now a 1 day a week consultant, is one primarily used to help do the budgets. And we had a person that had done this historically that was superb at putting budgets into Munis and producing readable documents that has been provided to the school committee. We're hoping that that will happen once the budget is approved. We'll bring the person back in to do that.
So we should see some cost savings then for getting a full-time person and eliminating the cost.
Yes, a full-time employee will cost equivalent or less than the current cost for the consultant.
There's a lot more work availability.
5 days a week rather than 1. That's also the person that does the Medicaid reimbursement for $860,000.
Okay, so 15.
15, can we see contract info numbers and real savings for custodians? We have an initial proposal from someone on a bid list, MHEC bid list, so we don't necessarily have to put this out at this time for proposals, that if you purchase off a state-approved bid, then you don't have to go through that process. And we do have the numbers, which we'll be sharing with the Finance Committee at your next meeting. And number 16, can we bargain with the custodian union to say, sorry.
My only concern,
Get closer to the microphone.
my only concern is maybe we see a savings in the first year, for them to get the contract, whoever the company is, but then are they going to raise it in the second, third year down the road, and then we're behind the 8 ball again with paying more than we should? And having gone through this once before, years ago with Serve Pro. It was a disaster. Products were not, that you had to do business and get their products. We couldn't get them in a timely fashion. Toilet paper was wax paper. It wasn't a good thing, and we went back to our own custodians within a year or two.
Hopefully we'll have learned from mistakes of the past. I can tell you that we made it very clear to the vendor that we are not changing any of our cleaning products or any of our paper products. That we're happy with what we have, and we're going to maintain those. That's one of the reasons they do this. That's where they make their big markup. We're solely looking for custodial manpower.
So I think, we'll need to have a separate conversation when we can look at real numbers and, with the specs and everything that you're just talking about, but it's hard for us to make any type of informed decision without seeing all of that.
Glenn, can I just ask what, how many, we have 2 units for custodians, 2, so how many total, both A and B, or 1 and 2, or whatever?
27 junior custodians and 9 senior custodians with 1 retirement.
So 27 and 9?
And we're only looking with this, we're maintaining the senior custodians in the schools because they know the buildings. And if this proposal works through, they will be working with the vendor for the cleaning services of the schools.
And are the proposed vendor willing or interested in hiring our custodians? Is that something that is also an option?
That was a discussion. There was a discussion, yes. They are not opposed to doing that, but that's up to them to make that determination. We can recommend people just like we can recommend any staff that's leaving for other positions elsewhere. And the superintendent and I have already talked to the company about that opportunity.
So, Chris, I think we had talked about it being this coming Thursday, so would that be something we can see for this Thursday?
We didn't post it today, we can't meet Thursday. We meet Friday.
Through the chair, Kristen, just be cautious, we have senior awards that evening.
Okay. All right, so then we're going to have to figure out what, maybe disseminate via email what we need to do.
Number 16?
Yes.
Can we bargain with the custodial union to save on overtime or doing work based on a 7-day week? Yes, I believe that is actually a requirement for you outsources to have negotiations with the union that's represented. And I believe that's something that the superintendent intends to do.
So the one thing that I've had a hard time with the past few years is we always, whether we're not budgeting correctly, and you weren't here, so I'm not looking at you, just there. We're not budgeting correctly, or if the overtime is something that's unmanageable, because every year I hear, well, we're going to save $100,000 in the overtime line because it's not budgeted, it's not paid for, it's more than we can afford. And then the next year we're in the same exact position trying to cover an overtime line that we didn't budget for, we didn't expect. So the overtime, it just seems that we run these schools from 6 in the morning to 10 at night, just about, with the athletics and the all different brownies, whatever in the elementary schools, and it just seems like that's a big part of what our problem is.
There are 2 significant overtime line items in our budget: substitute teachers and custodial overtime.
The city pays $15,000 a year in overtime for custodians to run just the basketball program.
What he said.
What's that?
And what you said. And a lot of the overtime that is done on weekends and evenings is supplemented by user fees, especially on Sundays. But we do have a significant amount of custodial overtime, whether it's covering for people who are on vacation or out sick, or coming in on Saturdays, or coming in on weekends during the winter, just to make sure the the heating plant is working efficiently. That was not one of the line items that was reduced during this current fiscal year. There are sufficient funds to pay overtime expenses incurred for custodians this year.
I think that's one of the problems we're in a deficit, though, because when we were talking last year, again, prior to your arrival, that was one of the places we were going to close the gap. It just didn't end up getting changed in Munis, but that's what we were thinking and talking about, and I just hear it every year. And the same thing with the substitute pay, it's we know it's gonna happen, it's not funded, we don't put it in the line enough, and then we end up having to scramble to find the money to pay it.
Again, the overtime for custodians was adequately funded this year. We will not run a deficit in that line item. One of the opportunities, if we are to successful negotiations with the unit that represents the junior custodians and possibly with the seniors, is talking about a work week that's not just Monday through Friday. And if you have people working on Saturdays, you don't have to pay them overtime if that's their regular shift.
But that still has to be negotiated. It's a change of working conditions, so you have to negotiate. I mean, a lot of this is predicated on if the unions want to sort of sit and bargain, re-bargain, or is there something that we can do to negotiate with them? Is there something we could give them that they want, that we can get some money back? I mean, so that's the reality of it. You just can't say, well, we're changing the work hours. You have to negotiate.
Or the other thing is we need to significantly raise our rental fee to cover, and then we get a lot of pushback from basketball and everybody else saying it's so expensive, but we're not making money on this. We're just trying to cover our costs.
Absolutely.
Although, I mean, I know that, sometimes there's certain organizations that things get donated, we still have to pay the custodial fee. So the custodial fee is separate from the rental fee.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, just for people to know. It's charged.
17?
17, can we look at stipends that are not advisor pay, and are these paid out of a grant? I'll defer again to the superintendent. I know we pay a number of out of grants, but we do spend a significant amount of money on extracurricular clubs and stipends.
Mrs. Can you just repeat that? I couldn't.
So, it says, can we look at the stipends that are not advisor pay, are they paid out of grants? And I think, again, this comes back into what happened this year, where the stipend pay wasn't, budgeted in the line. It was kind of a surprise towards the end. So I think we even need to know who gets a stipend.
I think all the extracurricular stipends are defined in the teacher's contract. We have not fulfilled all of the line items that are in the contract over the last couple of years. We've worked with the union as well as with the principals to primarily focus on the higher volume extracurricular activities to be able to benefit as many students as possible. So, in other words, if there was a extracurricular activity that attracted 8 or 10 students, in the past we ran that, and now we're not running that. We're asking students to either reassess that and pick another activity, or to we're just not running it because then we don't have to pay the stipend. And the teachers union has been very collaborative with us on that. They understand the purpose of cutting back on some of the stipends in order to not run those activities. But the most important comment here is the fact that the extracurricular activities are critical to our students. They stay in school longer. A lot of students participate in athletics, but also participate in the extracurricular activities. And it provides a longer and very comprehensive school day for them. So we put a reduction into the extracurricular activities, but by no means are we advocating that that's the best situation for students. But we have done a tremendous amount of work at both the middle school and high school levels to be able to consolidate the activities, run the activities that are attracting the larger number of students to be able to get the most value added to students out of that process. So.
And just so we know, we're all on the same page. Stipends means athletic coaches, it means
Athletic coaches.
extracurricular, like clubs.
And yeah, and teachers who volunteer. We post once we have worked through the extracurricular activities in each of the schools that are going to be offered, we post those positions. The stipends are defined by the teacher's contract, and then teachers will apply for participation in those extracurricular activities, and they receive that stipend once the activity is complete. So, and we have cut back dramatically, and we have principals here who can speak to that if you wish. So.
Are there other things being paid for teachers to take, like professional development that they earn a stipend from, or I know not a course, but
Or is that like a grant funded thing?
yeah, is that grant funded or?
Well, there's a per hour rate that's in the teacher's contract for curriculum development, as well as it applies to some of the summer academies that we run for professional development purposes. But I'm not going to give you a percentage, but the larger percentage of those are primarily driven by grant funds in one way or another. We've cut back dramatically on the typical professional development work that we did in the past, because we've purchased new curriculum products. They're very, very solid. They've been supported by our teachers, and we just haven't had to do a lot of extra work around those. There's always standards work that needs to be done, cross-referencing, and that continues to move on, but there's not a tremendous amount of money that's being paid out of stipends or hourly rates to do that type of work. So.
Okay. 18 then? And that's why it says that's a such, not a push.
Hiring of people to do extra jobs,
Such.
as MCAS installation in the fall. Currently, we have, I believe, one temp person assisting with testing at the high school CTEI, and I believe that any opportunity we have to hire part-time people that will not be requiring health insurance is a benefit to us. In fact, at the SLT meeting this morning, we talked about staff that would be available at the schools, part-time staff called counter aides, that would be available for all of the school day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, 2 per school at $12 an hour. Hopefully they can recruit parents to do that. Same type of people we can recruit to do these things. I'm sure we have to pay bus drivers a little bit more, but we do have a couple of buses available now, and we can hire part-time people on an hourly rate to provide additional services, absolutely.
Actually, hold on 1 second. I'm not sure if we answered the intent of the question.
I mean, were people doing these jobs before so that we don't have to hire part-time people? Even at that, that's money that we're spending, even part-time people. But weren't people doing the job beforehand?
Yes. This is atypical this particular year. In most cases, all of the MCAS coordination, security protocols, etc., are all driven either by the principal or the assistant principals within the school. In this particular case, we had a part-time substitute secretary who was in to cover for one of our schools and was kept on to coordinate some of the MCAS testing, but as I said, it's atypical, and we won't be continuing that in the future. So it's an isolated situation this year.
And I know several years ago, we had someone already working within the system that handled the busing issues. He no longer works here now, but I can't think of what his name was.
There was an individual in the finance area who would handle the busing. The last couple of years, we've hired someone for maybe 4 weeks to be able to take the edge off of the number of phone calls that we receive, but very, very short term, so.
And I'm not, I'm not
And this year we
discounting somebody.
didn't, this year we didn't hire anybody, so.
I'm not discounting, we need the help, but it seems to me that in order to try to save money, these are ways of saving money, saying it should be somebody working within the system to do these jobs.
That's right. I'm just going to make a comment about that because I did do the busing coordinator job one summer, and that's a lot.
No, I know it's a lot.
It's a lot of work. And I only did it for 4 weeks, but I know that the work that I did definitely helped relieve, I think Glenn, you did it this year, right? Because on top of everything else, that's what, you know what I mean? And it's a lot. You spend a lot of time. You have to take rides out to bus stops. You have to go and look at, routes. So, to me, that was, I think that was worthwhile.
And
No,
we
I
changed the,
understand that, Heather. I'm just looking at ways we can, save some money.
No, I know that.
That don't impact students.
I know
By
the
him
person
doing
who
it, it
did the
takes
busing
away.
in our district, we changed the scope of their job when they left, and we're going to transform it into something else, so I think that's how we lost the busing piece. Because they did do it, as part of their job description, and now we don't have that.
If I might, just one comment. Fitchburg does have a full-time person doing that. We don't. It's the business office primarily that responsibility falls on, with assistance from other departments, especially the secretaries at the schools.
Okay, 19?
Do we buy in bulk already, or does each school do that individually? We do place bulk orders primarily for paper, but we purchase most of what we purchase through the city's bids. Most of the, I'd say half of the requisitions that I sign are on papers that have been approved by the city through the city's purchasing agent.
And/or state bid.
Correct.
So a lot of times what happens is companies are already pre-approved for certain items, so they're already listed there, so we don't have to bid the item, we can just purchase off the state bid list.
So there's no savings to ordering in bulk, it's already been negotiated down.
Well,
We'll put out for services, for instance, most services that we know, most items that we know are going to be reoccurring, we'll bid them once. We'll get them. So in a catalog situation, it might be somebody has a 30-page catalog, it might be a discount of 10% off whatever the catalog is. So we try to, everything from oil to gas to pencils to anything you can imagine is, we look around for the best price.
And we do that?
Yes.
Through purchase. It's all done through purchase.
And there are Chapter 30B requirements. Any purchases over a certain amount of money, you have to solicit proposals. I think that the schools do a very efficient job making sure that the money they have available to them is spent efficiently.
Through the chair, though, Kristen, as the mayor indicated, a lot of that is collaborative with the city. So they enter into a contract for electricity. A lot of our solar savings has come through a consolidated effort with the city where we purchase kilowatt hours through solar farms, and it's dramatically decreased costs across the city. Same with HVAC services, some of our facility services. All that's done in collaboration with the city through the city procurement office. So we participate. Our facilities director participates in regard to our buildings and the amount of services that we require, but ultimately it's done citywide.
So when we bid on like electricity or gas, that's all done on speculation, futures, and everything.
So we feel comfortable getting the best price we can. I guess that's,
Greg Chaplin, I
it
want
wasn't
to call
my,
him
it wasn't my
cheap,
question, but I'm guessing that was the
but
intent.
he's pretty frugal.
Okay. 20?
Questions 20 through 22, I think, are more appropriate for the superintendent because we've discussed many of these items this morning at the SLT meeting.
Can we just go through?
Sure.
I don't have the questions in front of me.
So, one of the things we had kind of touched on in an earlier meeting is if we had less professional development days, the teachers work less, they get paid less, it's something we'd have to go to the union with. If that doesn't work, what if we just didn't do professional development days, they're in the classroom, what are we paying for professional development?
Well, I think there's a misnomer there because in a lot of cases, districts run professional development days, they're district-wide days. They bring in guest speakers, they, pay larger amounts of money for contractual fees for those guest speakers. That's not the way we ultimately do it here in Leominster. So a lot of it is building-based professional development. It's been very, very effective that way. The only major full PD day that we run is at the beginning of the school year where we bring teachers together and actually through a joint professional development committee process that we've implemented out of the last contract negotiation. This PD day that's coming up to kick off the 17 to 18 school year is all focused, driven by the teachers on social and emotional learning and student development. So that's really the major PD day, and the other days are pretty much building-based PD days. We also have shifted to half days, which students come into class for half the day. The remainder of the day is strictly for PD for teachers. Any changes in regard to the school calendar at this point, or the PD number of days in the contract is open for negotiation. It would have to be in fact. So once again, getting back to a comment earlier in the evening, that if the school committee is serious about something like that, we'll sit down, we'll negotiate it, but it's going to take some time to be able to get a conclusion. In regard to the last two questions, which are in regard to support of curriculum in the classrooms, I think this was in your list of ideas that came from staff members in the community that I provided you over the weekend. We have major pieces of curriculum in the elementary and middle schools. We have our Wonders, which is English language arts curriculum, primarily at the elementary level. Envisions, which is our mathematics program at elementary. And STEM Scopes, which is a relatively new curriculum that we introduced to support the new curriculum standards and frameworks in science, technology, and engineering this particular school year. What the teachers and the principals have forwarded to us is there's what we call disposables, but there's workbooks and related materials that we order every year that are provided to the students that help support classroom instruction on a daily basis, and the students have the workbooks and materials at their places to support the curriculum. A lot of the teachers and principals indicated that at least for a year they could go without that in order to save some money. So also at the middle school level, we have Big Ideas, which is the relatively new math curriculum, and Collections, which is the newer ELA curriculum, English language arts. So in total, we're still looking at a number for Collections, but in total it's about $118,000 for those disposable materials. And the only reason I call them disposables is that they're provided to students every year. They use the workbooks, and then ultimately they take them home and we reorder them for the next year. So in regard to Wonders, we had this discussion at the leadership team meeting this morning. We feel that with the online module within the English language arts program, we could probably get by without ordering the materials, and for the elementary schools, it's about $12,000. In regard to Envisions, and, well, Envisions primarily, that's about a $77,000 figure. But what I fear, and I was clear with you in my notes that I provided to you over the weekend, is the fact that I can't afford to put the district into a situation where there might be a vendor calling us out for copyright violation. And depending upon the nature of the materials that teachers feel that they need to provide to the students, it could increase photocopy, document management costs, as well as I said, possible copyright violation. So we're still looking at contracts to figure out what guidelines we can and cannot implement, and that's why I didn't include this cost in the list of reductions. We did include an overall 20% reduction in classroom supplies in the buildings, but we didn't take this full cost of $118,000 only because we were trying to make sure that we were working through the guidelines that we needed to within the contracts. So we'll continue to work through this. At least if we can get half of it, we will take that as a reduction, which could possibly save another position, but we'll know that within the next couple of days.
In STEM scopes?
Oh, and STEM scopes, I'm sorry. That is a relatively new science program. Very, very comprehensive program. The department just recently, about a year ago, released all the new standards for science, technology, engineering, and have urged districts to start to implement curriculum as soon as possible. So we took that on. We ultimately have been working with the program during this school year, but it highly depends on a online portion of the curriculum that teachers can access, and the school committee experienced this firsthand because you actually ran through an exercise at one of our workshops, saw the online curriculum, and the online curriculum pretty much provides teachers with lesson plans and with all the information on the kits that can be implemented for project-based learning in the classroom. So to lose the online portion of that, you'll lose the majority of the curriculum, and that's on a per-student basis. There are booklets that also go along with that, so I'm working with the vendor now to figure out what we can and cannot do to cut back on that, since the majority of the curriculum is in the classroom, and we can probably implement, but I also don't want to be in violation with the vendor contract. So,
When one of my first meetings last year when I got my seat was we got presented with the STEM option, and STEM scopes was only one of 3 that we were presented with. So, and the other 2 were presented as less expensive or almost free options. And are we looking at switching away from STEM scopes to save costs and taking on a different STEM curriculum if there's a huge cost savings involved? And the others had online pieces too, so the teachers wouldn't be losing them. I mean, are we looking at that seriously as a way of saving?
I'm not looking at that seriously because the teachers primarily had input into the decision on the curriculum, and we've already implemented it for a year, so I don't really think it's fair to the teachers to then implement a totally new curriculum. But let me work with the vendor, figure out how much I can bring the cost down, at least for FY18, and then we can figure out, work with the professional development team and with the professional resource network teachers within the buildings and get their input on that. So,
as long as you're getting their input, because they might be willing to change it, but not a big savings.
that's true.
Is that the end of the questions, Kristen?
That was the end of our sheet. I looked, and it looks like most of the ones that you submitted to us are redundant. There are several that are all union specific, would have to go renegotiate with the
Yep.
union.
Merely, I think, is used the Billy net school spending requirement. So for the sake of discussions for budgets, it's something that I ask all departments to come in. The budget document, as far as I'm considered, is a communication tool. It communicates a lot of different things: successes, challenges, the future, forecasting things that are regulations that have changed. One small regulation on the city side is you can no longer, we use very little salt in the streets sand in the winter. Why do we do that? Because it costs $60,000 to $80,000 to dispose of it in a special place, because you can't just reuse it. So we can't reuse it anywhere. We have to pick it up and dispose of it. So a department would come in and talk about, here are some changing stormwater regulations that have changed, and that's going to cost us $200,000. And then add the 60 or 80 for removal of sand and properly disposing of it, and then on and on and on. So people will use that for that reason. The net school spending, or the required number, is just a starting point in terms of the budget. And then from there, what I asked this year is that we include a priority list. So when we do exceed our required amount, where exactly are the priorities of the school committee? If you listen tonight, there's nothing that we as a school committee want to cut. Nothing. It's all important. It's all necessary. There's not a thing that we heard tonight that isn't. But let me just talk on where the budget process goes. The state hasn't even passed their budget yet, so we don't even show what their numbers are. We're going to pass numbers. We're going to pass a budget. It's numbers. That, I think, out of 24 years that I've been here, we've changed the budget 23 years out of 24. In other words, even after our budget is passed, the city passes its budget. The school committee, most of the time, the state passes their budget later, so we're back taking another vote on that. Generally what happens is the school committee can change line items. So it can change from expenses to salary, it can change from salary to expenses. So the ongoing discussion about budget shouldn't end when a budget is passed by the school committee. That's really the beginning point. Actually, those conversations need to happen right through the summer, the fall. That has to be sort of constant. All of the budgets, there are 18 different departments in the city, counting the school department. Let's rough it off to 20 different departments. Everyone will turn in that same budget. Everyone's budget will be a baseline or a starting point, a communication tool to say, here's what we did last year. Again, here are some of the challenges that we have, and here are some of the things that we would like to do, and here's why. There's a good form of communication in that. And that's the way that I asked the school budget to be prepared this year. Because let me just go over some of the challenges. If we raise taxes by 2.5, and I know people get this, the gentleman said tonight, there's 15,000 parcels. The average household, a 2.5% increase brings in total about $1.6, $1.7 million, depending on value. Here are some of the challenges for the school department. And again, there's nobody here in this auditorium, there's nobody I've met, nobody at the senior center anywhere that's anti-education and doesn't want to spend money on education. But here are some of the just basic things that are the challenges for the school department. $2 million in increases across the board, not just for the teachers, but everybody who works for the school department. $700,000, I'm roughing these off, $695 in insurance. And I think the city, as our budget team did this year, and we have a budget team and a finance team, and that's recommended, based on what we've done, it's recommended to cities and towns all over the state. And that budget and finance team did a really good job. I have to give them credit. They kept it down to 6% increase in healthcare costs. That's pretty substantial. Anybody in the business would tell you, Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance costs are just soaring through the roof. We were hoping to get by at 8 or 9% citywide. But in terms of the school department, it's a $700,000 increase in insurance alone. It's $1.2 million, as you heard tonight, just in transportation. Forget whether these count towards net school spending or they don't. They're just numbers at this point. SPED needs. We haven't even started to talk about the SPED needs. We have talked about it. But tonight we didn't even begin to talk about there are future funds that we're going to need to spend on special education. We know that, you know that. Northwest School and then the renovations in Northwest are at $3.2 million. Johnny Appleseed at $3.8, and we haven't even found the funding source yet to fund those. But that's a great deal, and we don't want to not take advantage of the fact that the state reimburses us substantially, somewhere near 70%. So those are things that are going to be sort of looked at, and we haven't even started yet about sort of adding new positions or adding money towards expenses or anything. And so what happens is everyone will turn in their budget, And again, there are so many other factors that are still out there. The budget team will sit down, the budget and finance team will sit down with me, and we'll talk about all those things, all the places that the money is coming from in the city, or maybe isn't coming from. We'll talk about what our tax increase will bring. We'll talk about what future tax increases might bring. We'll talk about things like, where is the state likely to settle in on their budget once the state and the House, the Senate and the House work out their budget. So we'll put all of those things together. We look at all available revenues. And then we've got to do what you do in your own home or business and sit down and actually apply that and say, okay, what do we need to do? What are we absolutely required to do citywide? What are the laws, the regulations, like insurance and liability, all of these things. And we're going to put a budget together. And the budget is, again, a form of communication. And we're going to go to the city council with our recommendation and a budget presentation saying, here are the numbers and here's how we got to those numbers. But this is still very early on and subject to change all along. No one ever said this is just going to be a net school spending budget. What was said is there's two columns. One is the required amount that we need to spend, and then what I ask for is, and ask from all departments, is a priority list after that. And so we're going to have to sit down. It's our responsibility to communicate through budget that if, in fact, it's AP courses, I expect to see on that list that's a very high need, or that's one of the areas that's highest on the priority list. They're all priorities, but at some point we have to rank those. We'll put it, because we have to be able to communicate that. So this process is just beginning. It has a long way to go in a short amount of time. Again, the budget team is more than just me. That's people that work in the budget constantly, that work on these numbers, that work on a whole bunch of different factors. And at the end of the day, we'll make that presentation to the city council, and we'll explain everything, where the money comes from, how we got where we came from, but there are still many factors that are, but I'm just going over just a few areas tonight that are challenges, clearly. It's a lot of money. If you just add it up, it's more than $5 million. And if you add an increase to the people's, I was out in the community since we started talking about this. There's nobody against education. Everybody knows the importance of education. But what people say to me is, I'm barely hanging in there. So you talk about, just tonight, just going over this quick, and this isn't a number that I want you to hang your head on, but just quickly going through this, on top of a 2.5% increase, you're talking around 7%, 7.5%, just to get to this, and I don't even think we included spend. So you see, it's a challenge. It's an opportunity in one way for us to examine this and look at things and come up with suggestions, but at the same time, somebody has to decide on this. Somebody has to. And I listen, I spent a lot of time in schools, I spent a lot of time everywhere. We did building projects. It's going to take every one of us. Everybody's got to give a little on this to get to where we're going to be. And that's only talking about this year. When we get into next year, there's more increases in salaries. There's more. Hopefully we can get by at 6%. So this is not just a one-time. This is something that we got to work together on. And we can. I know we can. Last time, people's comments, everybody was angry, and I understand that. A lot of misinformation gets out there. I know how important after-school programs are. I realize that. I realize how everything that goes on here and how hard everybody works, and the money they take out of their own pockets to put into the programs, and the long hours, and the extra activities they go to that they don't get paid. Totally worried. That's what I've done all this time. That's because I've been involved in the process. I've had to sit with these department heads while we say no to them, and they haven't used it against them and even complained at all.
And I'm not using it against them.
No, but you just made a statement. I'm trying to say to you, they do take that into consideration.
Well,
when we have to say no to them, they do take that into consideration.
well, my responsibility is to my children and her children and their children, and not to those departments. And if they feel differently, then that's fine. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying this is where I'm sitting. The other thing is, we haven't talked about SPED, which is important, but all of these things that we're talking about in this process, we still don't know our numbers. And if we look at our budget and we say we need certain things that we just absolutely cannot do without, and that is going to bring us over that baseline that you keep talking about, which I understand that, the net school spending, then it is our responsibility to say to you that the baseline has to be more than the baseline, and then there's the prioritized list. We we can't guarantee that that we can make that baseline work, and we have to have the right to debate that and talk about that and place our vote in a way that we think is responsible.
In 1986, when they did the charter rule, the reason that the city voted, the residents voted to have the mayor continue to be on the school committee is to have a financial input into this, sort of, so that you understood sort of what's happening around the city, in terms of its financial situations. Which is the reason why, I think Eileen would have to agree, because she's been sitting next to me this much time. When we gave increases in pay, I had no issues at all. When we started LC, I had no issues at all. And all the good things that have come here are recommended by the superintendent. But I always ask the question to the school committee, and I always ask the question to the superintendent, how are we going to pay for this? And the answer has been, and I have it all on video, I have it on record, has always been, we're going to have to take out of the budget. And I would say, but that could mean cuts, and if that's much of a priority that it is, then that's what we're going to have to do. And now the day has come. And somehow or another, everyone's forgotten that fact that we had those discussions about, yes, teachers are important and their salary is important, and so is everything else that we've done. LCE, nobody just, I think it's a great program. However, when we voted on it, there were no fixed, there was no money, that we'd be using other money from different places to fund it. There were no fixed costs to cover this. And when we asked the question, and I asked the question because that is what the people wanted me to do as mayor, when they changed the charter in the city and said, no, we want you to be on the school committee. You don't have to be on the school, we want you to be on the school committee because of these reasons. So when I brought it up, well, how are you going to pay for all these things? The answer was always the same. And I understood it. It means tough decisions later on. And now we have to make those tough decisions.
And with all due respect, the last thing I will say is that, but at the end of the day, there are 9 of us sitting here, and that's 9 votes, and it will come out the way it comes out because everybody has their own, everybody has the right to their vote, and at the end of the day, the majority wins, and then whether we vote the same way, and I agree with you or I disagree with you, when the vote is counted, if whatever the count is and the way it goes, if I can't vote in the way that you would like for it to go, at the end of the day, we will still leave here and be civil to each other, but I will respect whichever way the vote goes, and I would hope you would too.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Listen, the numbers you come up with are the numbers you come up with. Again, here's what the budget, look at all the budgets, any budgets you want to see online, look at them all. They'll start out with, the budget's 110 million. What would the request? 180. It's impossible to find $108 million worth of request. It's not possible. So somebody has to say, we can only afford this much. The taxpayers can only afford this much. We only have this much. So I will come back with alternatives to say, well, if we increase taxes by this much, you get this. If we increase taxes by this, or I'll come up with some other factors if I know of them. But yes, turn in any budget you want. But you got to understand, they're all important things. At the end of the day, there's only so much available financial resources to put towards all of this. And I just gave you a few tonight. That's not even a baseline. That's not even getting started. That's not adding any teachers. That's not talking about SPED. That's not talking about anything. We're $5 million off when a tax increase only brings in 1.6. And the gentleman spoke tonight was talking about an average tax bill. That's if you live in a small ranch somewhere, a condo. The reality is most bills are going to be much more than that. And he hasn't even factored in the 2.5% that we always pay. So you're probably up to $400 and $500 on an average size house. I'm just saying, those things have to be looked at, and you're right. You have a job, and I respect you for that. But I hope you respect me for what I have to do at the end of the day when I take 180 and turn it into 110.
And I think I started my statement with saying that I respect that your position is a difficult one because you have to keep that. But my position is not your position, it's a different position, and I ask that you respect that I'm coming from 100%. A different place, and I have a different constituent.
Okay, Heather, then no.
So, so like Wendy said, I respect the decisions that you have to make, but I don't agree with just presenting a net school spending budget with a wish list. Because if you listen to the first speaker who spoke tonight, Mr. Giannakis, who said he has 31 days left in his job, if if we are able to present a budget that accurately reflects the needs of the students of Leominster, which is in our creed that you read before every single meeting, we should be presenting to you our needs, because that's what we have our principals do. That's why we have our senior leadership team. They're the ones that work in the trenches. They're the ones that say, these are the things we need. And they have conversations with them, and they talk about what are things they can do without, so that they can be respectful of what our job is. And I'm very thankful for that. But at the end of the day, our job is to say to the city, we put our trust in our senior leadership team. This is what they say they need. This is how much money we need in our budget. It goes to you, and then you decide how much you're going to present to the city council, who cannot add anything to our budget. They can only take away from our budget. But in 24 years, I wonder how many times the city council has ever been given that opportunity to be a part of the process and to say, you know what, maybe we do want to give a little bit more to education. They've never been given that opportunity. And I would be interested for all of those teachers that are, that had to receive their walking papers, that if they knew, if you know, Mr. Giannakis, if you know that I'm going to fight, that we're going to present a budget that would include your salary, would you be looking for a new job? Or would you stick around knowing that we're, that we're
We can't
fighting?
start having a conversation. We can't, listen.
I'm not looking for a response.
Let me just respond to you.
Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, go ahead.
No.
This is
I'm not
question.
looking for a response. I'm just using that as an example. How many of those teachers, if they knew that we are presenting a budget that would allow them to stay, would they stay?
Let me just ask you a question, just a procedural. At the end of the day, whatever budget is passed by the city council, whether it's everything you want, or it's not going to be able to go. Whatever the budget is, what is the requirement and the legal duty of the school committee after that?
Well, I would hope that the city council would entertain our conversation so that we could have that active discussion. And then
The
if
budget is
city-
passed. Then what is your legal duty after the budget is passed? Whatever the number is, what is the legal duty of the school committee?
What is the legal duty of the city?
Susan, you want to answer that? I think Susan knows the answer. What is your fiduciary legal obligation?
We have to live with
You have to live within the budget. So what are you going to do? Now you're going to sit down and have the same conversation I'm trying to have now. Prioritize this so we don't have to have this discussion in August or September or July. That's all. Just trying to put this forward to say, look, I know we're not going to get everything we're asking for. It's impossible. So let's have this discussion now rather than, okay, here's your numbers. Now you're going to come back and figure out how you're going to do it. Now you're in a crisis.
You know what? I think I'd rather do it that way. I think, like Wendy said, I would rather say to you, this is what our school needs, and then they go through the process, and then they come back and say, this is what you're allowed, and then we work from there.
I think I've said it, I'll say it again so everybody's clear. You can turn in any number you want. I asked for this because I asked for this for every single department, not because things aren't important. They all are. I'm in the schools all the time, we talk to kids all the time, we talk to teachers. I understand the importance. We built 3 brand new buildings here. We understand the importance. We did it in 10 years. We did it with low interest rates, and we didn't raise taxes because we had this conversation with the school committee and the city council and the residents saying, what's the chances of us getting an override or a debt exclusion to build these buildings? And everyone looked at me and said, is there any way you can do it without having to raise taxes? And I said, it's not going to be easy, but we'll do it. And we pulled it off. You can pass any number you want. At the end of the day, I have to make a recommended number to the city council.
That's great.
If that's what you want to do, then that's fine with your process. The problem is, you're going to be in trouble with staff because if you do have to lay people off, you didn't give them the adequate notice. And I'm trying to prevent
I want
that
to
from
make sure
happening.
everybody has a chance to talk, so Nona, go ahead.
I agree. I think all of us here, sitting here, we respect each other, and whether we disagree or agree. We respect each other. My concern is from conversations of people calling me and people emailing me, school choice. I've heard many people are now looking to take their children elsewhere and have them out of our district, which means we will be getting less money. Another thing I've heard, teachers that are fearful of their jobs are applying elsewhere. And then all of a sudden, if the money comes through to keep them, they probably have been hired someplace else, which then we now have to hire some other people. And you're not going to probably do that until August, which, I'm concerned with that. I'm concerned that, making this priority list, how do we choose? How am I going to say that sports is more important than AP courses or vice versa? I can't say that. The other thing is safety. We haven't talked about safety. And there's three components of that safety. Safety in the classroom, which is class size. If we go too high in putting kids in the classroom, that becomes a safety issue. The other is safety in schools, particularly at the middle schools and the high school, when you're going to eliminate the deans. Where is safety going to be there? And then safety in transportation. If we're looking at reducing costs in transportation, how safe is that going to be? I think we need to look at those things also. And, we've made mistakes as a finance committee, as a school committee. We've made mistakes in the past. I certainly have learned from those. And as far as my ability, I won't let that happen again. I won't let that happen again. And I think we need to put forth a budget that, addresses some reductions in expenses. But hopefully, I would hope that we could save everybody's position, because I can't say that a secretary is more important than a custodian, is more important than a teacher. They're all important. They all make this system work.
No, I agree. The reason why we have to prioritize it is because once the budget is passed by the mayor and the city council, and it's expenses and salary and crossing guard, it's the other ones are minor. Anything that we said we were going to spend money on doesn't have to be spent on those things at all, right? Were you under, Kristen? Is that it? So once we pass the budget, it could be spent as long as it stays within salaries. If the superintendent says, and I'm not saying he's suggesting this, we're going to hire 3 teachers and he hires 2 and a principal, we have no control over that. None. And the only control we have is moving money around from expenses to salary or salary to expenses. That is the reason why. We have to have more control over this budget. Nothing against the superintendent, but we're the balance in the check to the superintendent. So when we sit here and we prioritize and say, listen, if it's sped, then it's sped. If this is really important, and we have to prioritize. We're going to be forced to prioritize. Otherwise, we're going to have to just rely on the superintendent that he's going to prioritize, because there's only going to be so much money. It's impossible. I didn't even add in a few things here, and I'm just trying to set the expectations here that if you raised it 7.5% taxes, you're still not going to get everything. You're still going to have to come back here, and the school committee, as a group, is still going to have to prioritize. I'm just trying to preempt that crisis.
You've alluded to the fact that you want us to give you a net school spending budget, but that you've made it sound like you will give us more down the road, that you will give us more. Why can't we know that now, so we know what
I don't know how much,
say?
I have no clue how much more. I don't know how much more the state is going to give us or less. Today, they're saying the state is $567 million short on their budget. That's just the beginning. That doesn't count next year. I can't tell you what the numbers are. You have to submit your numbers to me, and then the mayor and the budget committee sit down and will take all available resources, go through this, and then you'll know what the numbers are. But even then, they're subject to change.
Okay, Cody?
Mayor, I I do have to take issue with a couple of things that you said respectfully. You know, first of all, what you call the baseline budget, you know, what you say is our starting point, is what I interpret and what I think many people in our community interpret as the legal minimum required spending that you have to put towards education. And at this point, you're asking us to create a priority list based on money that may not even be spent. We don't know. You could not spend a penny more of net school spending. You could spend $1 million more. We have no way to know that. So for us to put our faith in additional spending that we don't even know necessarily exists, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Let me just answer that. So respectfully, I take issue with that. Because if we cannot communicate what our priorities are as a school committee, how am I supposed to go out to the community and tell people, I potentially might raise your taxes, but where's the money going? Well, I can't tell you that because everything is a priority. That is not how I want to communicate. I want to be an advocate. When we built the addition on this school, okay, I had to advocate with Nadine Binkley at the time. They only wanted to fix windows, heating systems, and the roof. We advocated and fought and fought and fought, and then we had to fight and fight and fight to communicate to the citizens why this project is now gone from $12 million to $45 million. And again, the state was paying a big chunk, but so were we. I need that ammunition, not ammunition, but I need that to be able to communicate. You need to be able to communicate to me or to the mayor and the city council. What are the priorities of the school department? We can't do that. We're in trouble.
You know, I would say one thing. I think we can think about this the opposite way, where we can submit, you know, whatever the budget was without any cuts at all, and just roll the expenses forward, roll the salaries for the wages forward,
And that's the baseline budget.
And present it. I think, but we have to be prepared that if we don't get all the money we're looking for, then what's the first things to go?
And that's what I said.
It's the opposite way of thinking
Yes.
about net school spending and going up. It's let's go high. I mean, because I think we all know we need more money, but up until last year, because we had a big glitch last year, we've never received the money that we've asked for and the things that we've wanted, and we've tried to advocate for more in all different ways, through grants or this or that. When you don't get it, you just have to be ready to say, oh, now we have to get rid of this, or now we can't do that. And that's what we didn't do last year. So I think our job is really twofold. It's advocating for more money through a variety of sources, the city just being one of them, and it's making sure that we balance our budget with the money that we have no matter what. So unfortunately, we do have, that is our job, is to make that decision and make those choices. So, I mean, I'm fine if we want to think about it in the other way and say, you know, let's vote for a budget that is, you know, whatever it ends up being, some numbers right in front of me. But we have to be prepared in 2 weeks, or whatever it is, to peel those numbers away and say, okay, we can't do this, we can't do this, we need to get rid of this. So we can think, I just don't want to get hung up on semantics. We have to be ready either way.
And this discussion wouldn't have happened until July or August. And that's not fair to anybody if we do have to make cuts. That's not fair to them. I'd rather have this discussion now. It's not a fun one, but it's a discussion that we have to have. And that's what I'm saying. You can call priority, call what you want. All of these things are important, absolutely. But at the end of the day, we're going to get a budget. Right? I'm going to come back and I've been on the school committee again. After the budget is passed, we're going to have X numbers in each of those 4 categories, and then we're going to have to live with them. And we're going to have to adapt, and then we can start this discussion. Then I don't think it's not what I asked from all other departments in the city. I asked for the whole picture at the very beginning, and it's always worked, and it's always helped, and it's the recommendation of our budget committee and our budget advisory group, and it's what's worked.
Cody, you also?
I have a couple more things. I have no problem with prioritizing, and I absolutely think that is our responsibility. My problem is with conveying to the public that these are somehow things that we're going to accomplish down the road when we have absolutely no evidence that that's necessarily going to happen. You know, Mayor, you keep mentioning the other city departments, but how many other city departments do you ask to prepare a budget based on 0.63% increase?
All of them, and unfortunately, over the same time span in 24 years, other than replacements, we've hired about 1 or 2 people and maybe a couple of half times. And that's a hard, you know, the police department needs people, fire, and you know what? the worst thing that can happen in our community is we start pitting program against program, person against person, and department against department. People expect us as leaders to listen, to gather as much information as we can, but then at the end, make decisions based on all of the information that we have. Yeah, let me tell you, the department heads this year are not happy. I can just tell you that. They are not pleased. They feel like they're being pitted against.
Nobody gets what they want to get, but at the same time...
Well, they're going to get less than what they want.
You mentioned compliance.
Yes.
What are the risks that we're looking at here? We're looking at lawsuits. We're looking at possibly losing the accreditation of our high school. There's going to be enormous consequences. We need to start thinking in a more long-term manner. And you know, when we rejected the net school spending budget last year, that was our intention, was to try and, you know, ask the city to increase their obligation. And I know that's not an easy thing to ask. It might not even be a fair thing to ask, but we're sitting here talking about cuts. We're going at it with a scalpel, going at the small things. We're going at it with a hatchet. We are, you know, talking about huge numbers. And, you know, I do expect the city to, you know, try and step up their obligation as we're trying to cut down on our own budget.
Well, Cody, honestly, we have funded the schools, which we were very happy to do so, no issue. We take on transportation. We're doing as much as we possibly can with every dollar that we have to put it. And there were a lot of other departments that were without because there were limited resources, and we did put into the school department. And that's just because it was a priority, and it continues to be a priority. But there should be no message to anyone other than the fact that there is only limited resources. We're going to have to decide how those resources get spent, and there's a big budget fall, not only for the coming year, but we've got to take care of this issue that we have right here. We still have to work on that. So that's, I think, the communication tool. Of course, all those things are important. But let me tell you, my police department is under incredible amount of demand. We have 11 people trying to get into the police academy. They are responding to more calls for more services. It's not just students and families that come here during the day, and we're dealing with them on weekends and nights and warrant of apprehensions and more calls for service, and they're being stressed as well. At the end of the day, we're dealing with a population here in the community that we're not Concord or Lincoln or Lexington or Carlisle or any of those rich communities. This is a working class community, and people are limited with the resources that they can pay. There's no pile of money sitting at, I think the misconception is, there's a big pile of money sitting somewhere. The mayor has it in his like account somewhere. And we don't want to just give it away to the school department.
And that's fine, but
Okay, hold on, I want to...
And we'll explain, and I hope everybody comes to the budget presentation when we do get to the city council level, because we'll explain free cash, we'll explain stabilization account. You know, when I was in the police academy the first day, they asked anybody if they wanted to help them out for a minute. They needed somebody to help them. And 2 people raised their hand and said, yeah, me, and they come on up, and they said, yeah, here's a Webster dictionary. It's this big, this tall. And they said, for the next 20 weeks or 15 weeks, you're going to carry that dictionary everywhere you go. And the lesson I learned was get all the information, all of it, every single bit of it. I had a responsibility. I learned from that day on. I listened to every person, every issue from every side, and then I have to make an intelligent decision based on all the facts. And all I ask is everyone to just pause and just wait, and we'll have a full budget presentation. We'll explain everything in the budget that you could ever want to understand. We'll bring outside people in to help you to understand. Listen, budgeting and taxation are not friendly, they're not happy, and they're not always understandable. We'll do our best so that you can understand it, so you can see how we arrived at where you did. And just, when I leave this meeting tonight, I'm going to go to 2 more meetings tomorrow where people are going to tell me the priorities of the city are off. Here's where they ought to be spent. It'll be somewhere else. And I respect that, and I know that.
Kylie?
I will do everything possible, I can guarantee you, to get as much money back to the school department as I possibly can. That's all I can tell you right now, but I don't even know what those numbers are.
So, you know, just sort of to reiterate what many people have said, nobody here wants to see cuts. We're here because we believe in our school system, and we have a lot to offer. But the bottom line is we don't have the money to sustain, you know, our current operating procedures. Many years ago, we did formulate several budgets that we passed. And, you know, as much as I was happy when we stopped doing that, maybe that's something we need to go back to. So there was a net school spending budget, so that's sort of, you know, if this is what we have to work with, this is what our budget's gonna look like. Then we had another budget that was, you know, if we got this amount of money, this is what we could live with, and then this was our ideal budget. You know, unfortunately, I think always the net school spending budget was what ultimately got presented, not to say that we might not have gotten money or schools or, you know, building projects or other things from the city. But, you know, we did present 3 budgets that really prioritized, you know, what we would be spending our money on if we had so much money. So that really was a priority list, and that's actually what we're being asked to do again. So I think that might be something for us to take a look at.
I have no issue. I need numbers, though. I need numbers because I need to begin to work on those numbers. And you can pass them, you know, I mean, I know what you're trying to do, but I have to sit with all departments.
Right, and we don't envy your job, and I wouldn't want to be the mayor, and I'm glad you're the mayor. But we do need to advocate for the students and staff and the community around the school system, but we also need to be fiscally responsible. And those things are always at odds with each other because we don't have an endless pile of money. But ultimately, we're going to give the mayor a budget. It'll be up to him to make the decision about what he does with that budget and what he presents to the city council. And the city council will vote on what is presented in front of them, whether they will fund it in full, what's presented, or whether they will make cuts. The city council has never made any cuts from the school budget that I can ever remember. So, and I think we all agree that education is important, and we'll do the best we can to do the best priority of needs, but ultimately there's got to be some give and take, and that's not going to be comfortable for people in the school system because we can't fund everything.
On the agenda tonight, just because I think,
So I have Sue then Ron.
I just want to repeat what I've been saying all along. The City Council has appropriated $5 million to build new fields behind the high school. And as much as a community, we all support that. I think this is a difficult fiscal time, and I think we really need to rethink how we're going to spend that $5 million, and hopefully I mean, I think we want the fields, but I don't think this is the right environment to put them.
That's not the same. And, well, that's something that looks, and we'll bring that up. We'll certainly talk about that.
Just one other thing I want to say, you know, Jim, when you're negotiating with custodians, would you make sure that there's a representative from this committee on the negotiations? I think there are 2 or 3 reps, and I think it's important to make sure that we're represented on that meeting.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Ron?
I'm very conflicted because, you know, we talk about layoffs for teachers, and I know about layoffs for nurses. It's very difficult at times. The futility of speaking truth to power. Power doesn't acknowledge the usage of truth in the management of delivery systems. I do not like and support net school spending because it's a unsustainable act. Because no matter how you dice it, there's going to be collateral damage. If you don't want to think about the teachers having any damage, think about the students. Because yes, there's money that we could use, as my sidekick here was talking about the free cash. We cannot hide. We cannot be like ostriches and put our head in the ground and expect something new to show up tomorrow. We cannot continue net school spending. You were asked what is our fiduciary responsibility? our fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that we provide a financial footing for schooling, for education. Because all we're doing, if we don't do that, all we're doing is we're practicing intellectual genocide. I don't want to hear any clapping, because I'm not clapping for the crowd. I am not happy. It wasn't for anybody, I wasn't doing this for clapping. What we're doing, we're practicing a higher form of Malthusian theory. We're culling the herd. Call it for what it is. I am not happy. I will not support the net school spending because it won't do what we're supposed to be doing. I am one of those students. When I graduated from here, I had no use for school. I had to relearn myself. So, if anything, I'm the student that has come back to haunt teachers and to make sure that education is delivered in a proper manner. And I mean it. So help me God.
Thank you. Heather, did you want to?
I did. I just had one more comment. And so earlier in the conversation, Dean, you said that we could present any budget that we want, and I just want, because last year we weren't able to, I just want to make sure that that is actually...
No, I didn't stop anybody last year. All I said is I need numbers. Nobody wanted to pass a budget, and I needed numbers. Numbers to submit. I'm running out of time. I have to by law submit a budget. Otherwise, hold on, before anybody leaves here, there is another option. Put the school department on a 1/12 budget, which means it can only spend 1/12 of its budget per month. That is the other option.
I don't think we want to do that. But Heather, I think the big problem last year was
I didn't think so.
we couldn't.
No, I'm sorry. We had a list from Ned Pratt from SPED with $1.7 million of positions that needed to be filled. I made a motion for a certain amount of money, and we were told we could not legally do that. We had to call in legal, and the next school
This was
spending
even
budget...
before that I'm talking about.
No,
If
that
we
was part of that
can't,
meeting.
if we can't produce documents that show how we're spending our money, and last year we weren't able to. I mean, it's the sad fact that we weren't able to. You can't ask for more money for positions that Ned needs, and I know we did a great job with all those spreadsheets.
He did.
If we can't show where we're spending the rest, how do we not know we don't have and we don't, but I'm just saying in theory, we don't have $1.7 million in our own budget that could fill them. We had to be able to produce things, and we can now. And that's why this year is going to be different than last year, because we can produce things that show where we're spending our money, and we can add all of Ned's positions on if we want to.
Well, and that's because Ned was right on last year, because we have the same deficit, only $100,000 more than last year. So they were very, almost spot on.
The school committee was at liberty to spend, Kristen, after the budget was passed, if it was that much of a priority for Ned to have his money we should have taken, it should have been a priority. Whatever the number ended up being, we should have funded, right?
But we didn't know where we were spending our own money.
Exactly.
So right. So
Which is
we're
exactly
not
what
there.
brought us
So
to this
I really want
process.
to focus on 18 and not 17. So what we need to do now as a school committee is a few things.
Can I just say one thing I was going to, because I think this is beneficial. There are when I say everybody can help out some way, it could be the unions, it could be, the city's going to have to, I mean, it's really going to take everybody. This is big. We've never had this kind of a shortfall. And so what I'm submitting to the school committee tonight might help in some way, because we've never had really like a donation account. That if somebody wanted to write a check and say, I'd like to donate some money, we've never really had that account officially set up. So if the school committee passes this tonight, that means people who pay taxes or don't pay taxes or school choice their children in can write a check to the school department. It's not going to be used for the city. It can be used, I mean, the question is going to come from the people I've talked to is, well, how are you going to spend the money? If you want me to give some money, how are you going to use it? We're going to have to explain that. Again, that means prioritizing. But I think, do the numbers. If I donated $500 and 200 other people donated $500, that's substantial, right? 200 other people. If 400 people donated, and then get into the 250s and the hundreds, that's substantial. Do I think that people would do that? Yes. But it's also an opportunity for somebody who doesn't pay taxes in town, who wants to make a contribution, and to help to keep the elderly in their home, and the people who are working class and work in the factories or whatever, who can't afford, who just got into their home, can't afford it. Maybe the interest rate went up. I had a couple loans, interest rate up 1 or 2%. Wasn't a big deal, but for some families, that's substantial. So if we pass this tonight, we can start taking donations right away. I mean, listen, I'm fortunate, I can afford a little more. There are people in this room who can afford, but maybe some people can't, but 10 turns to 20, 20 turns to $100, 100 turns to 1,000. You know what? It's substantial, and I think people in this community would, businesses and people, would be willing to do that to help fund.
So, yeah.
What we checked, and not under chapter 4453A, which is right, which be specifically though, and you have to amend it, is what I'm told, is we have to amend this to include this. It reads, expenditures from the donation fund may be utilized for any school department purpose unless specifically restricted by the donor's use. And that's what makes it different. If the donor says, listen, I want it to go to music, or CTE, or whatever, then you have to, under the chapter and the section of the law, use it for that. I'm 100% behind this, because I give my money. That's something I feel passionate about. But putting this on an 88-year-old person or a 90-year-old person that's living on Orchard Street, trying to hang in there, keeping the lights and the heat on, to me, it's just a tough sell.
So we have the LEF, and this would be similar.
In addition
to.
You can specifically, it's like, specifically state, I want my money to go towards.
Say to the lacrosse team or something?
Yeah, but that's what the Leominster Education Foundation
Whatever
does.
you want. Whatever you want. You can specifically state. Right. I can't say I want my money to go to CTE or the music program or theater and arts.
Actually, I made a donation to the Leominster Education Foundation last year, and I said I wanted it only to be used for the homeless children that were living in the hotels. So it can actually be designated to whatever you want to
Under
spend it.
4453A, that's its own non-profit organization, right? Isn't that correct? It's a 503C. 501C. That's separate than the law. The Mass General Laws, Chapter 4453A is different than the Leominster Education Foundation. I'm just saying, I would write out a check to for the purpose of helping education, and I think there are a lot of other people in the community that would do, and I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people about this, but they specifically wanted to know where the money is going to go, which is exactly what I've been talking about. I need to be able to communicate the priorities of the school department. I can tell them, your money's going to go towards this, if it isn't specified.
Okay, so what we need to do as a committee, the first thing, Glenn, is we need to put together, using that sheet that we've referenced before, a simple way to read what our budget will look like for next year. Salaries, expenses, what we're using from the revolving funds, get that total number. So I can work with you to do that. And then the iterations, whether we say it's 3 different budgets, whether we just say it's the priority, we could have 20 different budgets in terms of however you're going up or down or whatever way. This committee needs to, independently from the administration, talk about what our priorities are, what we want to make sure are funded. And then we work with the administration and jointly decide how we're going to do this, whichever way we want. So I'm worried about timing, Dean, to be honest, because I didn't realize about graduation activities this end of this week. So we need another meeting where we can just dialogue about priorities once we see the budget that Glenn puts before us. And then we need to decide what we want, how we want to work with the unions. I mean, we had one union come before us, but I think that we need to reach out to every stakeholder in this district, whether that means that fees go up for, the clubs that we do have, whether that means, our own stipend, whether that means the teachers, or whatever that is. I don't know how we do that, Jim. So that's up to us.
What I've been doing is I've been, through the chair, I've been communicating directly with the union presidents. So taking Sue Cola's suggestion, we can either do that with the negotiation subcommittee and have representatives of the school committee meet within those meetings with the union presidents and express the full committee's parameters as to how they want to proceed. Whatever way you feel, because at this point, I just want to reiterate that I did what was asked of me. We needed to produce a net school spending budget. We produced a net school spending budget, and it resulted in the reductions in order to meet that number. At this point now, it's at the school committee level. So whatever parameters you provide us with, we will carry them forward and facilitate whatever process we need to facilitate to get to the various budget scenarios that you want to meet.
Well, I think, rather than just eliminate positions and programming, I'd like to at least reach out to the unions and see if there's anything we can do, before we get to that point.
And I agree. But at this point, I would rather have the committee provide me with some parameters so that I'm presenting your will to the union associations appropriately.
So that would be the next, so what time is it now? It's do we want to have that conversation now?
It's been 5 of 8 since I got here on that clock over there.
It's almost 10 o'clock.
I know.
So I don't know if 10 o'clock is the time to start talking about, more serious and substantive things.
Let me just, Rick, Counselor, when do the budget hearings start?
19:30.
So, and this is, if you go back and watch the video from last time, this is what the trouble we get into last time. And I said, you've got to give me some numbers, at least some baseline numbers, because I need something to work with. This is the same scenario.
Yeah.
It was almost to the day.
But it's better because we have.
And then it's taken as,
units.
I'm only going to give net school spending. That never was the intent. But I need some numbers. So I need to know the schedule right now of when the school committee is going to pass a final budget, because I need to communicate that to the city council. And I need to be prepared when I get to my budget meeting, which is basically the finance team will be there. The city's finance and budget team is going to be there. But I need those numbers. I can't do it last minute.
So we need a meeting to talk about our priorities and come up with what iterations we're putting forward. So when do you want that to be?
Scheduled on Monday.
And we have a school committee meeting scheduled on June 5th. The only other parameters I provided you over the weekend is, first of all, I need to notify staff by law by June 15th. Our budget hearing, as I indicated, is on June 21st at 6 o'clock. So,
Budget what? Oh, the council is when? June what?
June 21st at 6 o'clock in the evening.
So I mean, that's...
But I have to notify staff ahead of time, so we need to move this along quickly.
We had, many years ago, there was many years that we routinely handed out pink slips with the intention of being able to hire people back as soon as we never
laid them off.
And we never did, but we did give them the notice.
No, and through the chair, that's no problem, we can do that. What I was attempting to do was be a little bit more finite. If we knew the individuals that unfortunately were going to be impacted, we're sending out a limited number of notices rather than blanketing all of our non-professional status people. But we'll do what is necessary. So I'm just cautioning you on those guidelines, as the mayor did earlier.
So you're going down June?
I'm 21st.
Okay, I'm going down first. So is it possible, can you give me a few days before I need at
So
least...
if we meet Monday, hopefully we can get
That's the 5th.
a lot done Monday.
So can we...
Friday night?
So Monday,
As long as
can
we
we
agree.
start our meeting at 6 o'clock instead of having it would be a finance subcommittee meeting on the first week. Can we just start our meeting at 6 o'clock so that we have a longer time to deliberate?
Yep. And I think that everyone needs to be prepared, before that. Glenn and I will get you a little bit more information before then, but everyone needs to think and be prepared to talk about,
Priorities.
their priorities.
And I think, when we're talking to the various unions, and I think it's a great idea to have a school committee member who's on the negotiating team part of those discussions, but I don't know whether the unions, in an effort to save jobs, would forego part of their upcoming raise or, some other kind of thing that might impact, that has to be negotiated, but that would be a clear budget impact if it saved positions. So I throw that out there, not that anybody wants to take a pay cut or not get a raise, But if it means saving jobs and.
Or work one less day.
Or work
don't
one
get
less
paid
day
for
or
it.
2 less days, and instead don't have a professional development day, so we're not hiring substitute teachers during that absence. There's ways of doing it. I haven't liked it, but I've had to have furloughs at least 3 times in my career, and you know, you have to do what you have to do.
Is Friday, I'm just looking at the calendar here. So Friday would be the 9th.
Yeah.
So is it possible by that following Monday, so the 9th, maybe the 12th?
Well, I think
But
if we can't agree on Monday, then I think we need one more meeting next week, and those are our chances.
So
He needs time to.
can we post a meeting for later next week and then cancel it if we don't need
do
it?
Monday and Thursday.
So why don't we do that as a safeguard so it's published?
So Chris, if you're okay.
June 8th, I think, is what I'm hearing.
So let me look.
Wednesday or Thursday?
I cannot do Wednesday, but I could do
Hold on.
Thursday.
We get chorus.
City Hall,
What day?
June 8th.
So 7 is 7 Wednesday?
Just so you know, I can't do Wednesday, but other people can.
June 5th and June 8th?
So I could do Tuesday or Thursday.
Actually, Tuesday's better for me, but
What about doing
we
the
can do
5th
Monday,
and 6th?
Tuesday,
Monday,
and wrap it
Tuesday?
up.
We did that last week.
Yeah, that's fine.
5th and 6th?
5th and
5th
6th.
and
5th and
6th.
6th.
Wait, one.
Work around me, I mean, that's busy
What's
time.
wrong with the 8th?
I've got budgets with everybody, so I
We
can.
have, we use that chorus.
Chorus is using City Hall for their fund.
Where our kids are in it.
Well, whatever you decide, you need to post it soon.
I know, that's why I don't want to leave, this is, I don't want to lose Chris.
5th and 6th, that's 6 and wait, 1.
I think FSC's.
Yeah,
Well, the 5th you should have anyways.
I'm not gonna be able to make those dates, but I'll work with the superintendent on this.
The 5th is our regular schedule for those, so you should have that.
Possible, I'm doing my best.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. I think it's really at the committee level now to work through a lot of specifics. I can continue to keep the
I just
mayor
need numbers.
involved, and we'll
And
work
whoever's on
from
the
there.
negotiating committee, can you touch base with Jim and come up with a plan and come back to us on Monday with whatever the plan is?
Yeah, I have that on my list on my desk to communicate with them tomorrow, so we'll work out the details on that.
Okay, Ron?
I'm just cautioning everyone. Good. I'm just cautioning everyone, very careful when you're making priorities. Because in my neck of the woods, as a healthcare professional, would you like it if somebody came into the room and says, we have to make a priority, Mr. Cody. Do you want to take care of your arm or your headache?
Right, but Ron, we found ourselves in a $1.5 million
Yeah,
deficit because we didn't do that last year.
I'm just
It's
saying.
our job to do this.
And the healthcare industry has done that.
Healthcare and education are two things intertwined. You have to be careful what you're doing for your priorities.
We're careful with everything we do up here.
I'm just cautioning. I'm just cautioning.
Every position that has.
Because, as I said, we might as well just say we're practicing culling the herd. It's as simple as that. We have to be careful what we're saying about prioritizing.
Of course.
Yeah, through the chair, Ron, just to reiterate, I think this committee has always worked in partnership with the superintendent and administration. I don't really believe that's an issue. We did the best we could to bring the budget in based upon the request that was provided to us, and we're more than willing to be flexible and provide alternative scenarios for you. So I think we can do that in partnership with each other. So we have dates, we have our work in front of us, and we can go from there.
So Chris, the time on Monday is
6 and 7 on Tuesday, or
6 again?
6 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 and 6.
Even if we don't, we can get out now and set that.
And let me just say, as far as goals, I can communicate mine right now. Try to keep as many people as possible is the overall goal, because, it is sad sometimes. It was the cafeteria workers, now it's the junior custodians. It always seems like You know what I mean? Like the people at the very bottom here, the people that make the least amount of money are always the people that are most impacted, and that's the part that hurts. And they work out. Listen, that should be the first goal, is, you know, before we start adding anywhere, the first goal, because there isn't a component of unemployment insurance that we're gonna have to pay. And the more people that we can retain, the less the unemployment
job sharing's
cost.
a good idea.
Yes, precisely. And that's why I say, there's opportunity here, but it's gonna take everybody to kind of work together to get to where we need to. That's in every category.
Sue's had her hand up.
Jim,
Yes.
just another clarification, because I heard you push back that the committee has their work to do. You still have to give us some real numbers on the IT.
Yes, we have finalized proposals that we received, so we'll provide you with complete information on the various outsourcing scenarios, et cetera, so you'll have that.
So when will we see that?
Glenn and I need to go over it because a lot of the information came in this weekend, so we'll review it and get it off to the committee.
Because I think that's important, and I am.
Well, it's definitely important.
I'm
yes.
concerned that, you know, like you've already given notice to some of the employees, and we don't have a position in place.
Yeah, but we, in all due respect, we had to communicate reductions to the school committee. We couldn't very well discuss those position reductions without people knowing about it, so.
Right, but they have dates, right?
Yes.
I mean, I guess that was my concern, that I think it's just, okay, whatever.
Okay, so I'll make a motion.
It's chapter 44, section 53A.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Those opposed? Okay.
Two. Who's opposed? Heather and Wendy?
Okay. So I really hope that people take it. I mean, I think there are people that I know, I've talked to people that said they'll write the check. Just,
So this is, what you're trying to say is this is in lieu of a tax increase going across the city?
I didn't say that. I'm saying it's another option, another way. I can't do anything. That's what I'm saying, it's way too early. This I know. If you collect $100,000, that's $100,000 that could go to the school department. And I think they would continue to give.
So we're going to get reports on this too? We're going to have to get updated reports and see all that kind of stuff too?
Well, just
Hey,
FYI.
I'll write my check tonight. I think it's a good thing, and I'll be the first to write a $500 check and more if necessary. I think people will do it.
At the CTEI Awards Night, a former graduate donated or gave a check, $10,000.
I was at
to
a...
start up the CTEI revolving fund, which, you know, Dayton Harbor was.
I was at
he
an
needed some
event
money.
at a reunion, and a gentleman handed me a check for $100,000. $100,000. People would give. People had good experience in the school system. They would give, and I think that's just another way of taking in some funds that will help.
I think just on another note, and then we can end it, you know, when we're talking about making cuts and everybody's sort of tightening their belt, one of the things, of course, is transportation that we're really looking at. And I know everybody wants to have their child picked up at the doorstep, but it's things like that that aren't going to be able to happen, that we're going to need more community bus stops and various things like that. So people need to understand that it's going to impact everybody, but everybody's going to have to have a
The
little.
one thing the consultant said that was actually, I think, a very good idea, Heather, I think that you were there in the room with me, is that what a lot of communities do is they set their bus stops. They're the same every year, year after year, doesn't matter where the kids live.
You get to the bus stop.
You get to the bus stop. And that way they're released and you know where your bus stop's going to be, you know, the year before you even need to use the bus stop.
So if you live on Mechanic Street or French Hill, you get picked up two places. Spruce Water or Mechanic.
Exactly.
That's it.
So I think that, and I can't get quoted on this exactly, but the consultant said it was for every stop we add or subtract. You know, if someone says, "Oh, just run by my house," it's $3,000. So if we can cut out 100 stops citywide, that's a significant part of our transportation deficit that we need to cut. So that just has to happen because that's what everyone else does. We've been providing an above and beyond service, and I know with the sidewalks and safety, and I'm all for all of that, but we can figure out a way to do it.
Okay, is there any other business to come before the committee? New or old business? If not, motion adjourned. All in favor? Those opposed? Thank you all for joining us and staying here right to the end. I hope we didn't put you to sleep.